Welcome to a special edition rock and roll marching for the firefighters, the plumbers, the bakers, the cashiers, the grocery store clerks, the welders, the truckers, the truckers and the bakers, the cooks, all those daycare workers in the daycare changing some diapers. Today it is Wednesday the 13th of that August. Just we had a big storm here in Montreal, Hawk Island, and I'm packed up, ready to go to my second home. And maybe we're gonna take a little bit of the detour, zigzag it, take a little bit of that special routes. Sometimes we just gotta go a little bit on different routes, you know. As we go to the mountain, my second home, Mount Royal, and in an outpost storm on those military grade boots, auctioning everything that I'm wearing. I'm financially stressed, but got trillions of kisses. Credit from the forgotten goddess, got million marching steps, and always got to put it on for the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, and the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food, and those public workers with the trains, and the public workers with the bus drivers, and the metro, always thinking about them. Integree in the North American Collectif. Here we got a little bit of donations. I wish I could just fill this whole baby up with a lot of food, and maybe one time I'll donate, I'll just fill the whole fridge up. And I guess it is always something which I gotta be grateful for. You got a little bit of red hot thick, somebody put this red hot thick Frank sauce. I guess you can use it if you want. And you got some snacks, Lunchables there. This is more for the children, I guess, but you can enjoy. I'm gonna leave some. This is mostly for the children, so the youth, and I'm gonna leave that there. He's got an Oreo cookie, so you can get a lunch, another lunch. Thank you for the donation. Another lunch there, so I'm gonna leave for the children. I'm just gonna leave those there and take the little meaty ones, because the meat ones can be eaten, and that's about how we're gonna roll it with that. And that's how we're gonna get inside and gonna get diplomat and make sure we got a lid on the go. So yeah, always grateful for that. See, you can check it out here. This you can use, or you can use all that food. See, that's really cool. So one time I wish I could just fill it all up, you know, fill it all up, you know, once in a while. Just I wish I could give more than I take usually, you know, because now I'm more taking than giving. But I guess doing a little volunteer always gets on that go, and that's how we got, and that's how we gotta get doing on that. And I'm gonna put these, you know, for the go, and get it on that, see there, and that's how we got. Leave it for somebody else, and put a little bit of that go, and a little bit of that do, and it's always something which I appreciate those who do their part, you know, in food security. And I took the one with the cheeses. They're basically chicken bites. So that's gonna be a chicken bite for me, chicken bite, and for my friend, and I took this one, red hot thick sauce buffalo. I guess I'm gonna be using it if I can, and whenever I do some cooking, because you know it takes those ingredients to cook a little bit of that good bacon, that good sausage, that good pork or beef or chicken, whatever the case may be. That's mostly for, I'm not exactly sure, but I appreciate the donation. And now we're gonna back it up, and here is a nice corner in NDG and Montreal, Hawk Island. Gonna put the backpack on, and we're gonna drill it on like that, and that's where we're gonna go. Ready, set, hot. Now we can go on the journey. Zigzag it a little bit, make sure I got the backpack right on tight. Oh yeah, got the backpack on tight, and now we can go all the way to the mountain and back for a few hours on these toes and stretching, and the sun's piercing those clouds. And I guess you have had enough of my face, I guess. Just gonna double check, yeah, what I got in that red backpack. In the red backpack we got some of those gloves, the red gloves, you know, which were gifted to yours truly back in 2018 after I started challenging Donald Trump to a boxing. Dragon versus Trump special edition, always for the Empire. Special. Let's create the SSD Legion, public-private partnership, and of course the SSD Legion to be the conglomerate of the creation of the new guards for the new 63 states. And I gotta watch my brothers and sisters crossing the street here like a hawk, because sometimes it's a little bit on the danger zone, and I always gotta be sure that in the public my responsibilities are increased and added, because I'm no longer in my private sphere, private space, and it's always a public-private partnership, and that's what we gotta do, and that's what is my dream all about, you know. A public-private partnership. Fundamentally, my dream, of course, is a call for a public-private partnership across the North American Collective, and you know, I have a little bit of a I'm different due to my Asperger's, and I was discussing a little bit of my condition, neurological mental divergent condition, not to be confused with a mental illness. And I spot the flag, Canada flag right there, flag spotted. I got it tatted on me, so I always got it tatted on me, so it's always on me, I guess, 24/7. Don't know when I got it, probably decades and decades ago, because as far as my personal memory goes, you know, that's what it is. And as far as my personal memory goes, before 2014 spring, you know, there's a difficulty for me to access those memories. My life prior to 2014, it's retrograde amnesia symptoms, so I'm not, sometimes they come back, but I don't know if it was the moldy place where I used to live in. I used to live in a very small underground space, like a tight prison cell almost, a small prison cell. It wasn't a prison cell, but it was very small and very moldy, lots of black, white, reddish, orangey type of mold, different MOLD. And I thought I would move in 2016, but it ends up it was 2015, so I moved 10 years ago, and I don't know how many years I lived there, but nonetheless, you know, I was attacked viciously by surprise. I still have to go to check the records at the Jewish General Hospital, because that's where I went after I was viciously attacked by surprise and fell on the floor at the Montreal Metro on the cement. Hit my head on the cement, and I had a dislocated right shoulder, right arm, and I was bloodied up, and went to the Jewish General Hospital, and flag spotted again, and they re-cracked my right arm, right shoulder, because it was really damaged. I was put on some meds, and I was like on yellow flowers, which I love right there. It quadruples my smile. So I was put on some meds, and I have to retrieve those archives, I guess, from the medical archives records, where whenever they are, I guess, you know, sometimes they're day for day, if they can. Probably putting on your deadline to go before September 11th, because you know the problem with me having Asperger's, and many Aspies encounter this problem. It's not of a big problem, it's just that I don't require much support, really. The different Aspies do. So Asperger's is also known as HFA, high functioning autism. So Asperger's is a neurological mental divergent condition. So Aspies, people like myself who are part of, there's not a lot of Aspies in the world. There's about less than 1%, less than even half of a percent. It's about 0.44% of the population of the world who have this neurological mental divergent condition, which is known as Asperger's. And so we see the world differently, right? We see the world differently, and this difference sometimes is marked in different ways, but just to see what it is, it's not a mental illness, of course. It is just because we have mutations, certain mutations at the micro level of the brain. Turn your head left or right when you cross the street. And due to these mutations at the microscopic level, at the nano level, right? They're really small. They're like, think about it like transistors on the microchips, like 4 small microchips in those transistor level, nano microscopic level. And of course, we see the world differently, and we have these routines, right? The people with Asperger's, we have these ritual-like routines where we engage kind of in a repetitive, ritualistic-like manner in those same activities with intensity, concentration, super focus, and super intensity. But sometimes the problem lies that it's to the detriment of other activities. X, Y, Z, W, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever those activities are. Sometimes it's to the detriment of those activities. But we also have our strengths. The problem for Aspies is we communicate differently sometimes. It's more, we accord and we utilize too much sometimes academic, sophisticated, intellectual parlance, once it's not really reflective or bringing any real it's not really necessary to use that language sometimes when we discuss certain ideas, theories, protocols, solutions. Even when it comes to certain solutions, that's why it's always working on the characteristics. Again, I don't utilize the word symptoms, because a symptom is for somebody who has an illness, a disease. And just as a matter of fact, 8 days ago I had to correct last Tuesday after I went to the movies because we went shopping, another fellow citizen, I don't know if he was a citizen or not, but we accord the same respect and courtesy to all who come to visit here in Quebec, Canada, Montreal, Hawk Island, island of the N.A.C.W.P, the Hawk Island. We gotta accord the same, of course, principles and adjudications, of course, to all fellow citizens, individual sovereign citizens. Look at this beauty, doesn't this just see? So how my Aspie brain now, see, I kind of try to calculate mathematically the distance and the kind of the value between those from the branches there, or how their length from the trunk. So in my head, I try to visualize. Of course, I can only estimate mathematical calculation, the proportionality of which one's the bigger, the smaller, the median, and what is kind of the median length of those. Because there, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, there are 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, 6, 7. Actually, 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like 4 and 4. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I was trying to do a mental calculation of their length from the trunk, right? But so from the trunk, from where they split off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stayed in my head, because that's just Asperger's. Asperger's can be really weird, but if probably a fellow Aspie would have engaged in a long conversation about our estimation of how much is the length. So if you have 8 pieces, for example, and this is just Aspie one-on-one-ness. Now you live it with me, I guess. Doing this long video, and you have, if you check my other past videos, but I would calculate in my head, I would try to estimate, because of course I don't have a meter, I can only estimate distances. So sometimes Aspies, we like these peculiar mathematics, right? So distance. So what my brain started doing was estimating the length of the 8 branches, right? And try to estimate which one is the smallest and the largest and the median one, and then adding them all up, and then divided by the number 8, which would give the median, right? Like the median, when you have 8 or several, you can have 4 or 5, you can have 4 or 5, you can have 6, then what is the median between the 8, you know? So I would estimate that, of course, it's a few meters. It's just a few meters would be the median. I would say maybe 4 meters, or let's say in yards, because you can calculate in meters and then yards. Yards would be probably around 4. Maybe 4.2156. Maybe that's exactly it. Very closely. I wouldn't be surprised, but these are nonetheless, I'm not the exact, but these are estimations, because you can only estimate. So for example, here, you see here, between that pole and that pole, there's a distance, right? There's a distance between that pole and that pole. And then there's a distance between that pole and that pole and that pole and that pole and that pole. So we can make from A to B, B to C, C to D, C to E. So we would have 4 distances. And then we would try to measure if they're equivalent. Or what is the fluctuation, by how much they fluctuate. So their fluctuation would be a certain fluctuation of the different ratios. This is just mathematics, and it could also be here, but these are kind of very similar. But here we could, since they're more like squares, they're rectangles, they're more square, we could do side times side to get the surface area, right? Basically the area perimeter would be to add them all up, right? So for example here, if we are to see, let's say, but see, some are different, but let's say that they're actually squares. They might not be perfect squares, but they seem very square. They kind of seem more rectangular. But definitely if they are, we would calculate, of course, the area here. Or the area here where we are, of course. The area here for where we got to get going on that. And that's what we have to get. The calculation. So basically the calculations here would be more than precise estimates. If we would have the meter, we would have the exact. But of course there's something which we have to calculate inside the mind, of course, of where we are here. And when we appellate or our internal interjections as the manifestation of a characteristic of aspiness would be, for example, to try to calculate by the brains, by the prior information, wisdom, and knowledge of the perimeter by adding the 4 sides, or by multiplying if it's the sides. If it's a rectangular or if it's a square, it would be the square times itself, because if it's a square, all sides are equal, like, right? Each side equals to the other one. All the 4 are equal in size if it's a square. If it's a rectangle, you have 2 which are the same, the length, and then you have the width, so 2 that are different. So these type of mathematics I like. Percentages, distance calculations, volume, velocities, stuff like that. I'm not advanced in mathematics. I don't know if I was, because I don't remember high school that well. Actually at all, so I don't remember high school at all. 2014 spring. My life prior to 2014. Spring remains a mystery. So all my life prior to 2014 remains the spring 2014. So March, let's say March, April 2014. But that's already 11 years and 4 months ago. That is already 11 years, because we're 2025, we're August 13th now. So that is already, thank you firefighters, saluting and loving our firefighters across the 10, the 50 and the 3, the 10, the 50 and the 3, but that's already more than 11 years and 4 months ago, right? So almost 11 years and a half. 2014, spring 2014 is already far away in time. Not that far, I guess, but depending how we calculate time, I guess it could be a long day or a shorter day or a long period, but whatever the case may be. So just to revise on Asperger's, it's not a mental illness, it's not an illness, and please, I had to correct individuals just last week. I had to correct somebody because that person said that it's a disease, and then I said no, it's not a disease. And then the person mentioned disease again. Yeah, I know it's a disease. I said no. Then he corrected it and said no, it's a neurological condition. And I said yes, it's a neurological mental divergent condition, it's not a disease. And I have to correct a lot of people about what it is, because they don't know. So they might mistake it as a disease, or you might even think that an N.A.C.W.P has a certain mental illness or whatever, which is not. It's not a mental illness. We're just different because we see the world differently. And personally, I'm not somebody who likes violence. I don't like violence, we can be intense, super concentrated, super fit, and sometimes because how we see the world, it says beautiful colors here. Very nice. So how we see the world puts us in a more vulnerable position, because sometimes we just say things directly, And since, of course, we say things directly, because we say things more directly, we can offend, And across on the other side. So we can, of course, offend. Gotta turn your heads left or right, because sometimes you have the cars coming, and always good, of course, to do what we have, of course, to do that we have to get doing on the go. And I love to see those yellow flowers there, and it's something which we have to appellate like that, and that's what we have to do, You gotta get those construction workers and the butchers and the bakers and all those who are, of course, involved in the production, distribution of food, and gotta get, of course, a little bit for that excavation. There's a lot of work here to do excavation, and I gotta admire the construction workers, because the brains, the knowledge, and I will to build the forgotten goddess temple myself with your help. And will to build a 4. So before I go into what I will to build with your help, of course, I'm going to continue finalizing the discussion on Asperger's, also known as HFA. So the primary, most important thing for one to know, turn your heads when you cross. One of the most important things which have to be known is that it's not an illness. It's not a mental illness. Right? It's not a mental illness. It's not an illness. It is a neurological mental divergent condition. So this condition makes us predisposed to these specialized routines. With these specialized routines. We have these special routines, ritual routines, which can preoccupy most of our daily habits, and most of our time really is revolved around that. So my engagements, my Asperger routines really focus around the Trinity, the 3 special interests which I have, which preoccupy most of my time. And that is one, or in whatever order, I guess, depending on order, but pretty much 24/7 is geopolitics, the study, the analysis, developing geopolitical strategies, geopolitics, sports and fitness, Dancing is my favorite sport. And of course, rock and roll. As I sing rock and roll, I create rock and roll songs on the daily, French and English. And it's geopolitics, right? So that geopolitics is of course something which we have to be considered about. And we have of course to be considered about. So that is my engagement in all of those aspects. All of those three with intensity, super focus, super concentration. You know, super concentration. You know what it is, and that's what it is. You know, so it's my cat auctioning this hat for $1 million. Auctioning this hat for $1 million. Auctioning this hat for $1 million. I'm financially stressed, but you know, gotta get that rock and roll. See here. So these special interests, which are routines, ritualized like routines, preoccupy our whole daily life activities, and we can be pretty intense, pretty focused, super intense, to the point that it's also known as an obsessive interest. But I don't use the terminology obsessive, because terminology obsessive is more for a neurotypical of which are you, the majority of the population. You are neurotypicals. You are the vast majority, the 99.56%, the more than 99% of the population. The more than 99% of the population, and we are the less than 1% of the population. Neurotypicals, you are the majority, right? And us, people like myself, sovereign citizen individuals who are neurodivergent, we are less than 1% even. And so we always have to build bridges. Within the bridges which we gotta build, I guess there's 4 categories. 4 categories: small bridges, big bridges, small bridges, medium-sized bridges, big bridges, or large bridges. Or it could be small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, and then extra large bridges. So we got to build bridges, small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. Within those 4 categories, there are subcategories of bridges which we have to build. Because of course those 4 categories, I'm just making an explanation or giving a reference, a point of reference of how of course those bridges have to be built in the consequential aspect of life, that we have to build those bridges in this manner, which of course we have to build those bridges in the manner where we are concordiate, and in the concordium of course of the appellation to be of course in regards to all our life, to all our daily life and daily living, you know, to all the daily living, that these bridges have to be built. But it's not just aspects who have to build bridges, it's a reciprocal. We have to build bridges, because myself, I don't have antagonistic, resentful feeling towards you, the vast majority of the population. Towards you, the vast majority of the population. So we have to build those bridges, and those bridges fall within generally those categories: small, medium, large, or extra large. It's just like when you order a coffee, you might order a small coffee, medium coffee, extra large, or large. Or you might order some fries, right? Small fries, medium fries, large fries, or extra large fries, right? So that's how we have to build those bridges consequently. Bridges of understanding. Because there's no medication for Asperger's. Asperger's cannot be medicated. You know, it's a lifetime condition, and of course, the condition you live with 24/7. You can't medicate. There's no medication for it. Even the causes are inconclusive, right? If it's hereditary, biological, that is, of course, genetic, or if it's environmental. So the cause of it is inconclusive as to yet. So it's not known exactly what the cause is. There's no consensus, in other words. Oh, double trouble flag spotted. Gotta show mine off. So the cause is inconclusive. The cause is inconclusive, you know. The cause is conclusive. And there's still a lot of work to be done. I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend who gifted me 2 books on autism, and one book specifically was rented for me from the library 4 times. Beautiful garden right there. Isn't that just gorgeous? was rented for me 4 times. 4 times. And I learned a lot about it. It's called appreciating Asperger's syndrome. It's called appreciating Asperger's syndrome. So appreciating Asperger's syndrome, learn how I am vulnerable. How myself, I have my vulnerabilities in these social circumstances, that I am myself vulnerable. I am myself vulnerable. To certain, of course, I turn my head left and right because you never know, I come fast, man. So I am myself vulnerable. So this vulnerability reflects in different manners, in different ways. But nonetheless, that book, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, which I recommend for both Aspies and non-Aspies alike, it shows and it portrays all these vulnerabilities which an Aspie might not be even aware of, because we lack certain skills, social skills, and knowing how to read social norms. These come very difficult for us, and that's why we have these vulnerabilities, because we don't usually know these things, right? For example, I wouldn't know if somebody is into me. You would have to tell me, and then I'll tell you that I'm not looking for anything serious. I propose to somebody again, I'm going to propose again, but a special type of marriage, if it is to be, engagement at least. First you start with the engagement, then you go to the marriage, right? First you start with the first you start with the engagement. First you start with the engagement, right? Engagement. I need to get a proper ring, but nonetheless, I'm gonna propose already twice. I guess maybe the third one, or the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the 11th. Gonna go like Biden. Supposedly Joe Biden proposed 6 times and got a no, and then the 7th he got a yes. On the 7th, he proposed to Jill. So that is aspiness, and this aspiness also comes with some problems. The 3 main problems. But again, I'm gonna say that I'm part of the LGBTQ community. I've been in the open for years. It's not something that I hide or that I hide. If you want to be friends, it's friends with benefits only. I am 50-50 androgynous pansexual, and of course it's 50-50. This androgyny comes mainly due to my previous past lives incarnations. I'm also a mystic, so I lived in the United States, was born post 70-76, once as a woman, twice was born as a man. I was born a woman here. I lived between 1688 and 1735 in a past life, previous incarnations, and that's what it is with that, and so that's how we gotta get that rock and roll. So that is just the point that I am also pansexual androgynous, 50-50. But if you want to be a friend, it's friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance, support my dream, which is mainly fundamentally my dream revolves around the work that I do on a constant basis and that I have done. And we Aspies have 3 main problems. We might have these 3 problems which affect us mostly, but also these characteristics of Aspiness can be repetition of words or phrases, echolalia, getting too close in conversation, or for example, one characteristic would be an Aspie would inspect, and this I do myself. I've been doing it for years, and myself for years and years and years, at least for 7, 8, maybe even 9 years, by several individuals who had some experience in the healthcare system and working in healthcare. That, of course, working in healthcare, that was given a little bit of that circumstantial reference. That, of course, I've been diagnosed independently by several citizens who had experience in the healthcare system, and I've been told, beautiful garden there, public garden. I've been told, you have Asperger's, you have HFA, high functioning autism, you're an Aspie. I said, no. I didn't want to accept the label, because there's been a lot of work done recently, especially in the 21st century, but for a long time it was very stigmatic. Still is, and still there's confusion. It's an illness and a disease. And I remember a few years ago, about 4 years ago, and I was working, and I had a job, and during COVID, and I heard somebody say in French, gossiping, I guess. And this is a thing which comes hard for us, because we don't really understand the social dynamics of gossip. It's hard for Aspies. If you're an Aspie, you know that our brains gets blocked. It's not. Our brains just block. We don't fully understand. We discuss ideas or principles, solutions, if you have to help in practical ways, solutions, but the gossip can be difficult. because our brain just doesn't get it, you know. Our brain is different, so we don't doesn't compute. It kind of blocks, you know. Maybe our brain just sees it in a more meaningless way, or because we discern differently, the discernment of the brain and all these factors, right? Whatever the case may be. So what's more important, and of course I've heard in the past when I was working, so that's a disease, you know, c'est une maladie, that's a disease. And no, I'm not a disease, I'm not. I can have weird, awkward, bizarre, strange, but I'm not a disease, and it's been a hard, tough road, and we have a lot to bring to the table, lots, and usually when those are things we have to do is, of course, when are related to our special interests, you know, to our special interest, you know, when it comes to our special interests. When it comes to our special interests, we're pretty good. We can be excellent even, you know, to the point of excelling in those special interests. Just gonna turn my head left and right before I cross the street. Because in the public, me, you, us, we have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, which I would have not had if I would have stayed home. I would have had less. Right? There's always the public-private partnership, which is in play, in motion when one is in the public, such as now my individual sovereignty and safety and security to be balanced with somebody else's, yours, and the individual and the collective. So it can be difficult though, for neurotypicals to and vice versa for us aspies to maintain long-term relations, you know. So the three main problems for aspies is lack of friends. We don't usually have lots of friends, and it's problem keeping them, especially if you're with neurotypicals. But there is cases, and from now on, just because I don't will to waste nobody's time, don't waste mine, I won't waste yours, and you know, I'm pretty joyous, and I do my work independently. I'm always open for business and pleasure, you know. You gotta be 18 plus though. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only, you know. Look at those beautiful yellows. Friends with benefits only from now on, you know. Friends with benefits only. And of course, friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance, thou art family. So the other aspect, of course, is the lack of friends, and the other aspect, of course, is the lack of the high depression and suicidal rate. High depression and suicidal rate. The high depression and suicidal rate. The high depression and suicidal rate, you know, it's 9 times higher. 9 times. That is very high. 9 times higher for aspies than for neurotypical. So that's for every one of you, which you constitute the majority. There's 9 of us aspies who suffer from that. And of course, the high unemployment rate for aspies, it's 80%, even higher than 80%. Can you imagine that? 80% or higher. 80% of people with Asperger's are unemployed. 80%, more than 80. That's 11 times higher. So for every one of you, the vast majority of neurotypicals, 99.56%, there's 11 of us who are unemployed. That is totally unacceptable, and we usually have, myself included, many jobs. I had many jobs in the past years. It's just maintaining them, you know? Maintaining the jobs. Maintaining the jobs. Right? Maintaining the jobs. Keeping the jobs. Maintaining the jobs, keeping them long term. So having had many, because of this strangeness, you know, it's more hard for us to socialize, and the socialization aspect can be more difficult, you know, and that's what it is with that, and that's how it comes for us, you know. That's how it comes for us, more difficult. The conversations, especially when it turns around certain things such as the gossip, is just because our brain doesn't process it, so we kind of don't know how to engage exactly in such conversations, you know. Our brains are different, eh? We're different. We can't compute. Our brains are different, and thus we see the world differently. And because we see the world differently, thus we can be sometimes more direct. I'm just gonna check what's the name here. I wonder how much they have, because we need to get that dragon on. You see, Achilles. Let's see. Now I'm looking, because I used to live. So this street separates my new neighborhood where I live now and my old neighborhood. I used to live over there in a very moldy underground type of space. It's like a tight prison cell with lots of mold, and I moved to a better place, and nothing that I will to go back, but sometimes I go back in my own neighborhood here there's lots of good shopping and affordable grocery stores, especially on Victoria Street, especially when it regards to certain fruits and vegetables. But besides that, nothing that I will to go back to. So, and my memory prior to 2014, spring 2014, it's blackout, I have trouble. Maybe sometimes it comes back. I don't know if I was prior to 2014, was I a junkie? Was I a junkie is the question, or was I an alcoholic? Did I consume amounts of alcohol for years and years and years? If I drank for years and years and years, and if I, for a few years, even 4 years, if I drank every day for 4 years, or I did drugs for 4 years, that sometimes it's possible that due to those habits, such as drug consumption, drug use, prolonged drug use, or prolonged alcoholism. If I was an alcoholic for a few years before spring 2014, then it's possible that some people lose memories. Hey, I have a good memory, very good memory, very good memory, but of the past 11 years, yeah, but before that, when I go back, before 11 years, I have trouble remembering, I have trouble remembering exactly the whole appellation where it is, and the whole appellation where we have to be, and we have to circumstances, and that's just what we have to do, and that's just how we have to do, sometimes which we have to appellate, in all the circumstances, prepositions where we are. Beautiful garden there with the sunflowers, and that's what it is, and that's what we got. And the sun's clearing the sky. It just becomes a beautiful sky now. As I go to the mountain, my second home, I kind of appreciate it, but I don't mind storms. I counted, it was like 44 thunders earlier between 9:30 a.m. Just when the stock market opens on the East Coast, and around 3, I counted like 44. Some smaller, some bigger, like the sounds of thunder, Maybe there were more, but maybe there were more. 44 and 9/11s, I guess. You're not gonna fraction, because how you compute them, how you count them is something which you have to compute and count for yourself in all the manners when we situate the distance and the sound, because the sound comes after. I mean, the location sometimes is bigger and smaller lightnings and the forms, but the distance, of course, is something which, of course, has to be co-equivalent, of course, to the sound, As the sound travels, speed of sound, right? So the speed of sound is 30,000, right? 30,000 kilometers an hour. A second? Is it a second or an hour? Yeah. Speed of sound, buddies. A second, we can, cut it into different microseconds, I guess, but it's a second, right? Of course, not exactly, but in kind of the whole, light is faster, right? Light is 10 times faster. Yeah. So light is 10 times faster. There's always light, I guess, coming, because there's always the sunset and the sunrise every second, and I guess the stars, but I'm not going to go into that physics now, because it's not for us. Just to finalize, the 3 main problems are for Aspies are this, and we have to build bridges, and its unemployment is very high for Aspies, 80%, more than 80%, that's 4/5 out of Aspies are unemployed, so this is totally unacceptable. What a beautiful blue sky. unemployment figures are very high. The unemployment figures coupled with the depression and suicidal rates, and I was depressed and suicidal. I was depressed and suicidal for a few years, like 3 years, depressed and suicidal, and I crossed Canada coast to coast, coast to coast, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. I crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and crossing Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean is what got me out of being depressed and suicidal. Look at this here in the sun. So crossing Canada coast to coast made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, and ever since then, of course, don't leave glass there, because a child might take that glass and break it and cut himself. So for safety reasons, that glass bottle, I don't know, I have to disinfect it, bacteria, you know, public health, because children sometimes come and I guess they play here, you know, if they play here and they take it and they play with it and they break it, they can cut themselves, you know, they can cut themselves. So we gotta have some public, you know, some public sphere. And my brothers and sisters, of course, here's where I'm now in my new neighborhood, and I used to live over there in a very moldy underground moldy space, and I was depressed for a few years. Then I crossed Canada coast to coast, and crossing Canada coast to coast, it's what got me out of depression. Oh, the sun, my king, the Pope is even higher now, even more powerful. Just out of nowhere, the sun started. My king, that's my king, the Pope, and the goddess kisses, dances with the brother, the sun, and of course that is, of course, the sun, which just out of, I'm standing here waiting for the light, it just became really powerful now. What a powerful sun, you know. That's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get going. So that is just, of course, all the situation where we have. Here's my old neighborhood begins. Kind of my old neighborhood begins here. And again, there's nothing that I will to go back to, because I was, prior to 2014, my life, I have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014. And here's where my old neighborhood kind of begins here. And from this situational place, the Cuban embassy is there. Cuban embassy or whatever. It's not really an embassy. I think it's a consulate. So this is where, that's my new neighborhood, and that's here. It's kind of where I'm in my old neighborhood now. I used to live over there, on the ground, small black mold, lots of black mold, whitish mold, lots of mold, MOLD, and I moved, and that's when I got out of being depressed and suicidal in 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast. 2017, I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event made me come out of my depression, and realizing how many things we have here in Canada to see, to do, I just appreciated it, and I guess I went in debt for me and my anonymous sister to take that trip, but I don't regret it. I'm $10,000 in debt, some residual for debt from that 2017, but I don't regret it, because maybe I would have, if I wouldn't have went crossing Canada coast to coast, maybe I would have taken my life, or who knows, I would have been dead or taken my own life. And that event, really, crossing Canada coast to coast, made me have a revelation. I said, so many things to see, to do here across this great country. And now my brain switches. I gotta salute the truckers, because maybe all the truckers across the 63 are coming of our Imperial Republic, let it be. And that truck's going south, maybe to the border, and that truck's going north. So all the truckers now across the 63, the 10, the 50 and the 3, maybe they're carrying so much goods. Imagine all the goods that they're carrying coast to coast, maybe some bacon, some cheese, some hamburgers, some milk. All the things that they're carrying, of course, are vital for the North American civilizational complex. As of course, you have to meditate on all the things that they're carrying. And of course, they might be carrying some cheese, some bacon, some lettuce, some romaine lettuce. And of course, they have to get it on that, and gotta get it on that go. You know, you gotta get it for that butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, and blah, blah, blah. That's how you have to be doing, and that's how you have to be doing with that. And you have to, of course, meditate on all the appellations and all the things which we have, of course, today now, of course, that we have all these common resources together. And of course, we got to meditate on all the truckers, and the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, all those truckers now. Look at that good red. We got to meditate for them, and of course, always be aware that is of course a great civilizational complex, which of course we need, of course, to continue operating as much as we can and to heal. I believe financing tourism across the 63 and my way better to get rid of the border and to create the Imperial SSD Legion, the Imperial SSD Legion, you know, that's what we have to do, and that's what we got to get on that go. And it's something which you have to plurality about, bus drivers with it, you know. It's something which we have to appellate and constitute, and of course be aware, of course, of all the privilege of civilization, because think about it, all this privilege, civilization really is a privilege if you meditate upon it. And I don't really know if that's 3G, 4G, 5G, how that works exactly, but I do know that civilization is a privilege, which was my thesis back to 2023 as the people's doctor, philosopher, artist, athlete, and geopolitical theoretical analyst and tears. So still financially stressed. I moved from over there to where I live now with nothing really. I don't remember what I had. I don't think I even had anything that I actually brought with me from over there, from my old life. And you know, this is like my fourth time this summer. I guess I'm beginning a fourth time here, and when I see all these cars and all this travel and all, you know, there's a certain beauty and order in the symmetry of the circulation of the cars. And sometimes I get a little bit disorderly with it's kind of a disorder in many ways, but of course a little bit of rock and roll. You need a little bit of those passion and energy. Sometimes we need the black and white and the rainbow to coalesce in a more creative manner, as I am of course also creative, but it's something which of course I always got to meditate in all just the science behind the trucks and the logistics, and the fact that this truck might be carrying romaine lettuce, bacon, bread, and maybe some cheese and eggs, and that is just something which we have to appellate and we have to do concomitantly. As I'm gonna cross on the other side and I'm gonna go up by that side. I don't want to pass by my own neighborhood because there's nothing really that I want to go in my own neighborhood. It's just something where I have to pass, and I just want to be in the sun as much as I can, you know. So I'm just gonna take a few steps and then go on the other side here. Sometimes we pass by that side, sometimes we pass by the other side. It depends, eh? Sometimes we pass on that side and on the other side, and sometimes we go different ways. We always go mostly to my second home, the Mount Royal, and it's always good and joyous to see the sun breaking the clouds, and always meditating on the truckers, what they're carrying, what they're doing with, and of course all the things which they're doing, of course, on the go. And that's something which we have to understand and fully complement and fully appreciate. You know, sometimes I think we take all this logistics for granted, and civilization is a privilege. But think about it now, all the big supermarkets are mostly, of course, there's a conglomerate here in Canada, but of course all the situational awareness is something that of course we have to understand fully, that now there's thousands of trucks and thousands of truckers carrying so much goods across the North American Collective. There are so many goods which are being transported now across North America, right? Across the 63. Think about it. So many goods are being transported now across the 63. The 10, the 50, and the 3. So many goods which are being transported. There's lots all over. Even now, there's so many. So many. Think about that. If you meditate, if you meditate on that, you have to meditate that now they're potentially carrying tens of thousands of tons of food. Because we are Canada, we reach 44 million. So 44 million plus 350 million, that's almost 400 million, if you think about it. So today is Wednesday. How many trucks you think they are carrying bacon? How many pounds of bacon? How many pounds? How many pounds of eggs? How many pounds of romaine? How many pounds of eggs? How many pounds of bacon? How many pounds of romaine lettuce? Kilos, tons, right? And that is going just now to the supermarket. That's why, to my protocols, I will have to know, and all our citizens of the fused Canada-United States complex, the Imperial Republic, coming modded B, and we need to establish a Imperial Republican Guard for all the 63 states, which we're going to fuse the 10, the 50, and the 3. And of course, to appellate and fully integrate and fully establish the integration, and of course the integration which we have in the appellative functionality of all our dynamics. Because we have to know, and citizens also, because we're going to build mass across the 63 big cities, small cities, total security, total service, total defense collectives via the citizen integration theory, and of course my DRT, where citizens can go and they can monitor the highways and have the knowledge, open source of all the things that are transpiring across the empire. The trucks, which trucks is how much is carrying, weight, how much bacon, how much cheese, how much sausage as a mass public-private partnership. To integrate fully, that's my CIT citizen integration theory, which has to be implemented for the North American collective, for the North American collective, for the North American collective, for the North American civilizational collective, for the North American civilizational collective. That's just what we have to do, and that's just how we have to drill it, you know? So being that is functional, and the availability of that functionality and prepositions, of course, is something which we have to fully immerse ourselves in. And of course, the point is that don't leave that there, because this, this pollutes. This has to be recycled, and I guess it's in the sun. You gotta get it. For that, I don't know if I brought gloves, but next time. I keep on forgetting to bring my gloves, so I can, just sometimes pick that up. Sanitation gloves, and that is just something which we have to do, and something which we have to appellate. And of course, it's in theory, we know that there's X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, and then we can categorize that certain trucks don't carry necessarily bacon or bread or cheese or romaine lettuce or etc., consumable, edible goods, but that they carry other goods. Whatever those goods are, right? That they carry other goods. And so whatever those goods are that they're carrying, it might be vital. And of course also clothing and other apparel, light bulbs, dildos, smartphones, clothing, jeans, whatever else, edibles or not, are being transported. The point is that we're open for potential vulnerabilities, even sabotage and espionage. So now we're gonna go, and I'm gonna go into a special dynamic. I'm gonna leave Asperger's aside and saluting the truckers on the roads now, and also the daycare workers changing some diapers, those working in fast food, flipping some burgers, cheeseburgers. And it's not all about Wall Street. It's not all about the money. That's why my dream best, and it's a Dragon versus Trump edition. I would have voted Biden, Kamala, and Granddaddy Trump made a mistake to invite us in such a way to become fused with the United States, and we will, but my way, and a little bit of because I'm a pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist, but my centrism or democratic republicanism, being that I am democratic republican or republican democrat, for the third party, the N.A.C.W.P, North American Collective Workers Party, for the fusion of Canada and United States thereof, is something which we got to do, which we have to do in the concomitant of all our appellatives and all, of course, of our appellations, where we have to do the dynamics, of course, of the integrative appellations of the North American Collective. Tu as besoin d'un coup de main pour ouvrir la porte? So we gotta get drilling with that. Sorry.
I said that's not where to stop.
So that is basically the appellation. The appellation, the call to the mass public private partnership. And these are so good. Look at these. These are so good. I really love those. Nice and colorful. I would love to have a garden full of those like there. Full of those. That would be so nice, you know, to have a garden, you know. It would be so nice, you know, to have a garden like that. Those are nice, and that is something which we have to do, and something which we have to appellate, and something which we have to constitute about, and that is just something which we have to do, and that is just something which we have to integrate fully, to get it fully on the interaction and the interactive plateau, you know, of everything that you have to fully understand and integrate commensurate. Wow, this is really nice. Forgotten Goddess Temple, let's build it. To have great gardens like this. And before I go on, I want to say that I will to build a fort. You already know from past videos that part of my dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, which is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership, is to build 4 big buildings, well, some bigger, some smaller. Gotta finish for the crane operators. If you're a crane operator, gotta get that dragon rock and roll for you. I always admire people who go on cranes and build our skyscrapers and build our construction workers and build our constructions, and that's a crane, eh? Quite an interesting, eh? How the dynamics of it, and of course it has a certain weight, of it, and the weight, of course, is certain dynamics and proportionalities, and of course my will, of course, is to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess GODDS, yes. You can see how now we're atop the mountain, eh? We went up, and now we're on Westmount, one of the 3 peaks of the mountain system. Mount Royal proper, where we're heading, and we're on Mount Royal, and this is Westmount, and the other one is Outremont, and that's why we have to get that drill, and that's why we got to get that organization, and that's why we have to, of course, integrate all our dynamics in our for building. So construction workers, I'm going to credit them, of course, a little bit of that construction, and that is something which we are going to have to do, the construction work, and the appellation, of course, to do, of course, the technical matters which we are to do in the construction buildings, and that is just something which we have to do in the dimension of all our North American collective civilizational complex, as we're going to fuse, is, of course, to build a Forgotten Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess Temple. Created that building for trillions of kisses. On the Canadian-US border, let's build the biggest ever Coliseum, sports arena for sportists in perpetuities, for sports in perpetuities, sports 24/7. For me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it, and me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it, you know. Me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it by fighting in a boxing match on the Canadian-US border, and have been them, and sorry guys, thank you. Have been him, and we'll continue, of course, to challenge, of course, Donald Trump on the Canadian-US border, and of course something which we have to do appellation about. So of course it's something which we have to do, and something which we have to appellate, and something which we have to conjugate together, you know. It's something which we have to do, and that is just something which we have to fully be instructional about in our propositions, in our positions, as we have, of course, the capabilities to do, and the capabilities, of course, are related, of course, to this dimension of all our fabrique, of all our continuing civilizational complex, that is of the North American civilizational complex, which of course is a new civilizational complex, which is not totally divorced. And what this says is that you need to utilize the other one. You need to use the other one. That's French. See? Utiliser l'autre trottoir, use the other. As it's kind of right there. So let's build on the Canadian-US border the biggest ever sports Coliseum arena ever built, the North American Imperial Coliseum. For me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate, we're going to fight, and it's going to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, aka the Blackout Bowl, where the Blackout Bowl, aka Super Bowl 47, one of my favorite Super Bowls, also known as the Harbaugh Bowls, was fought and played. Many Super Bowls were many Super Bowls were played there, were fought there. One of them was Super Bowl 47, Super Bowl 47. Of course, the Harbor Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl. And of course, that is something which we have to continue to do, you know. So, of course, the continuing, of course, to be in the appellation, of course, the binational strategy which we're going to implement as part of my bipolar collective. Bipolar, not to be confused here with the psychological, psychiatric condition, but of course with the bipolar, of course, condition. Not to be confused with the bipolar condition, you know, is something which we have to appellate, you know, and that's something which we gotta do, you know, in the appellative, of course, instrumentalities of where we are to get doing with that, where we are to get on that rock and roll with those XYZ exploitatives, and of course we gotta get that foundation for the X and Y and Z, and of course to get it on the go for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, firefighters, the plumbers, electricians, and once again the bipolar geopolitical strategy for the for the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion. For total BDD, the benevolent dominance and dominion is, of course, BDD, the benevolence, dominance, and dominion is, of course, put together concomitantly, and of course in the appellative structure, of course, that it is to be remissive, and of course as soon as possible applied, and that's how we have to begin doing the application, of course, of the BDD, the benevolent, dominance, and dominion, of course, which is, of course, something which we have to concomitantly, in essence, put, of course, in all the appellative sentences which we have, of course, something which we have to appellate, and we have to get, of course, the prepositions where we are, of course, now together in the 21st century dominion, of course, in the left, right, and Z, and of course, which we have to communicate under the circumstances of turning our heads left and right, and of course, the dynamics, of course, where we are crossing the street safely, prudently, via double prudence, crossing the street by turning our heads left and right, super important. And after you cross safely, you can, of course, focus on this beautiful, smelling good, nice, so good. And then once you cross the street safely, so the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, for the fusion of Canada and United States into the Imperial Republican complex by implementation of the debt refusion theory, CIT citizen integration theory, and the DRT debt refusion theory, has to be fully understood from a geopolitical perspective, not from a psychiatric condition, or the bipolarity as a reference to the bipolar condition as in the psychiatric condition. But when I make reference, of course, to bipolar, of course, is the bipolar which we have to get doing on the appellation, of course, where we have to be doing on all the circumstantial references of all our coming Imperial fusion as being an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, strategist who develops, of course, strategies and for the North American collective. Gotta salute the bus drivers, and that's what we have to do. So, of course, that's the reference, and I will to build 4 with your help, your support. Construction workers, rock and roll. Let's build the forgotten goddess GDDSS, because I credit me surviving COVID. I had COVID back in between February 2020 and March 2020. 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 February 2020 and March 2020, you know. It was really like death, pestilence, and disease. I really thought that was my last chapter. I survived COVID. I got triple vax, so 3 vaccines, and gotta turn my head left and right here when we cross the street, and my cousins there and cousinettes on the bicycles, my great family here with which I established a strong esprit de corps, Quebecers, Canadians, and my brothers and sisters in the USA, you know. Because I was born post-76, once as a woman, twice as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces, 156 years apart in 2 different wars. That is, the wars were 156 years apart, and you just got to read through A Glass Darkly by George Patton, one of my favorite poems, where George Patton discusses the discussion by George Patton is, of course, discussing his reincarnation and his appellation, his poem "Three Glass Darkly." It's one of my favorite poems, and George Patton didn't mention that he was my wife once, as I was George Patton's wife, and I guess if you're 18 plus, I'm the Imperial husband and wife, double trouble. I'm priestess of the goddess, rainbow dragon, the Imperial, every man's wife and every man's husband, every man's wife and every man's husband, I guess. Every man's wife and every man's husband, I guess. Every man's wife, and that's a pothole there, see? A pothole. Across the streets, living safely, and that's what we got, and that's what we gotta get on that rock and roll. So you gotta give a little bit of the prudence when you cross the street here, That's what we got, and gotta get a little bit of that prudence when you cross the streets. And quite some beautiful houses here. I wish I could afford get my anonymous friend a house just like that one, kind of like that one. One for me, one for her. That would be super nice. For her by the river. By the river, By the river. That's nice here. So we're atop Westmount here now. Westmount. One of the three peaks, Westmount, Outremont, and Mount Royal proper. So we're heading to Mount Royal, but by kind of a different route. Kind of like a zigzag, a little bit of a snake style. And we're gonna go even differently, because usually we go straight, but this time we're gonna go by that way. Just because I wanted to change a little bit. I'm not totally resistant to change. Some Aspies have more problems with change than I do, but I guess in the past 11 years and 4 months, this is like my fourth change. When I moved 2015, when I crossed Canada coast to coast, when I survived COVID, and now I guess summer, and I'm about to celebrate 8 years since I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017 spring. Crossed Canada, went of course to the when I crossed Canada, of course, look at these beautiful flowers there. When I crossed Canada coast to coast, I crossed Canada coast to coast. That's the event which completely changed my life, and that's when I got out of my depression. And that's what it is, and that's where we go, and that's when I got out of my depression, and that's of course where we get that appellation. Here we gotta cross the street fluently, you see, because there's no light there. Actually, the light just popped now, but of course otherwise we gotta cross the street fluently. So here we can go this way, see? We can go up on the side, and then we can go by the side of by there. But we're not gonna go that way, we're gonna go on the other side. So we're gonna go like this. See, because this is Edge Hill, beautiful garden here. So it goes down the steep, and then you can go much up higher by the mountain, like that. So it goes up the mountain, and then goes down all the way to the river. So now, of course, we are on the side of the mountain. I love this beautiful garden. This beautiful garden right there, this beautiful garden where we are. Of course, something which we got to operate, or something which we have, of course, to get on the drill here. See, look at that beauty. I wish I could give my anonymous friend this house right here. Wish I could get my anonymous friend this house right here. And that's what it is with that. And that's how we got on that rock and roll, to get it on the drill and get it on the go. And that's just what we have to do. And we have to admire a little bit of that beautification. That was private, but of course it's in the public as well. So we're gonna go on Aberdeen. So we're gonna go up by Aberdeen. This is a beautiful garden as well. So leave the baggage at the door. I'm just gonna, before I commence, I go into geopolitics. Before I commence and go, of course, into geopolitics, of course, the study, the analysis of geopolitics. It is something, of course, which we're gonna cross. We're gonna go that way. We're gonna go up. And that's where we're gonna go. And so we're gonna cross the street there prudently. We're gonna cross on that street prudently on that, and we're gonna go up. So of course, all the appellation, of course, where we are, that's where we gotta go on that, So that's where we are. Nice. Now we could feel it even more when we go up. See, now you feel it. You feel those legs. Yeah. because now we can go even, we're going even up higher on the mountain, all the way at top. So now you need to leave the baggage at the door, but before you do, I'm going to discuss the 4 buildings which with your help I will to build. Forgotten Goddess Geodds Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, parallel to the Forgotten Goddess Temple, will to build, of course, on the Canadian-US border, the biggest sports arena complex ever built, to be 11 times bigger than look at those beautiful blues, the biggest sports arena ever, to be 11 times bigger than to be 11 times bigger, of course, than the Caesar Superdome, Mercedes-Benz. See, it's going up. Going up. Anybody want to finance that I go up and down? A few times, $300 up and down these stairs. Some rock and roll. See, that's where sometimes we were over there, we film pointing up here, but see how we're on the mountain, atop the mountain, Mount Royal West, the peak West Mountain. See, that's the river. That is the river, see? The river which surrounds H.A.W.K, Hawk Island, Montreal. So that is the river, H.A.W.K. And here we're still going up, so we go up. So I will also to build the biggest ever sports arena complex, sports coliseum ever built, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, where my 49ers lost by 3 points. One of my top 5 Super Bowls, favorite Super Bowls of all time, is known as Super Bowl 47, and it has a nickname. Super Bowl 47 has a nickname, and of course, hardball ball, blackout ball, it has that nickname, and of course, that Super Bowl has, of course, a nickname. Several nicknames: hardball ball, blackout ball, bro ball, several nicknames, and of course, that's just what it is with that. And my 49ers lost by 3, but the hardball ball is one of my top 5 nonetheless, and 3 out of the 5 are my 49ers winning 80s and 90s Super Bowls, and 1 is a none when it's not when my 49ers played, but when what's that? Sometimes oh, that's cool, the mountain. That's the mountain, eh? Mountain bearing, the sun, and the 3 Peak Mountain, I guess. Sometimes I look at stickers, and quite funny ones. I thought it was again like in last videos. You see that I look at the stickers that are for Quebec sovereignty here, which is still yet, although mostly resolved, conflict of the 20th century. You know, so that is of course something which we have to do, and it's just something which we have to appellate, which we have to get on the industrial matters of things. But of course, now we're still going up the mountain. So to build this, and before I digress, I want to say that one of my top 5 Super Bowls also includes, see, that's the river, also includes, doesn't partake in my 49ers, but it's when Brady won his last Super Bowl with the Patriots, the lowest ever scoring Super Bowl against the Rams. Brady's Patriots won 13-3, 2019, and Brady won the 7th with the Buccaneers after 7 years after they were saying that he's too old. 7 years after they were saying he's too old. But give some charity, multi-millionaire athletes, and some of y'all still need to come out of the closet, because 0 are out of the closet in the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, of course, sports leagues, of course. That's what I gotta do, and that's how you gotta do it on the left and on the right and in the Z, and all those, of course, involved in the production, distribution of food, you know. Gotta get it for them. And yeah, I'm gonna cross a little bit. Oh, now it's making this slippery. So we're gonna, this is a bit dangerous here, because the sprinklers are not well adjusted, but so you gotta watch it at the corner there, because you could slip, I could slip, and somebody slips who's, you know, is children, but just It's important for the flowers, but just that side corner can be a little bit more dangerous, you know. That's what it is with that. It can be a bit on the more dangerous side. So yes, I will to build the biggest, together with the biggest ever sports arena complex ever built, where me and Donald Trump were gonna fight to inaugurate it. For the inauguration is gonna be a Dragon versus Trump. As in my backpack, you know, I have those gloves, red gloves donated by my anonymous friend, and the gloves donated by my anonymous friend, the gloves which of course were donated in 2018. I've been putting them to good use and auctioning them for $1 million, auctioning them for $1 million, you know, to make some of that 50-50. Gifted me those gloves when I started challenging Donald Trump. That's when I got into politics, really. I was just coming out of my depression. I moved and changed my life, and Donald Trump imposed his tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, and we need to fuse, but Granddaddy Trump is not the way to invite fellow Canadians to fusion by tariffs, and that's it, that rock and roll. So let's build a fort, forgotten goddess DDSS goddess temple on the Canadian US border, the biggest ever sports coliseum arena complex ever built, to be super majestic, and of course 11 times bigger than the Caesars Superdome, who changed names. Before it was Mercedes-Benz, and before that it had another name, and of course it used to be known as the Louisiana Superdome. So just like me, I changed my name officially yet to play that paper, pay, because, you know, it takes a little bit of bureaucratic fees and change the name. And you see many of my videos dating from during COVID, when I said when I reached 300 on my own creative workout training program system, that's when I turned the A into an O. So Adrian H. Dragon, I'm Adrian Hana Dragon, Adrian Hana Dragon, Adrian Hana Dragon, Adrian Hana Dragon. Keep my name out of your mouth unless it's for a blessing, and that's what we have to do, and that's what I have to appellate, and that's what I have to conjugate together in the North American Collective and build a Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow LGBTQ community and neurodivergent community, two in one, double trouble purpose, serving together. And for me, the pyramid, House of the Dragon, Scarlet Crimson. Scarlet and Crimson are basically shades of red, right? Scarlet and Crimson are shades of red. Red, like my hat, my backpack, and of course my phone. So let's do it. Build the four, starting with me now with this march. March for my allies and armies. Pledge your allegiance, legions, friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance, legions. Support the foundation of the N.A.C.W.P, the North American Collective Workers' Party, and the Global Dragon Union, to fuse Canada and the United States into the 63 Imperial Perpetual Union. We need to sign the Imperial Perpetual Union documents, calling all willingly loving, you know, on the left, on the right, in the center, and of course the North American Collective constitute a collective North American civilizational complex. And me and Donald Trump, we're gonna fight on that Canadian-US border. Sportsmanship like conduct, and I don't like violence, you know. I was attacked viciously by surprise. I was bloodied up and hit my head on the concrete, and I am hyper vigilant, you know. My hyper vigilance is only, of course, gonna play for DDDD defense, and for the North American Collective. That is something, of course, which we have to do and we have to appellate, and that is just something, of course, which all of us have to implement on the dynamics of all the blessings that we have together, the blessings of civilization. And this blessing right here, look at these. I just love them, how they were built here on the left. Look at these. I just love these. These are so nice. That's how we love it, a little bit of that, and that's how we gotta get doing on that, and so we gotta get doing for those beautiful flowers. They're all sent, but I could bring them home and now to get it on the go, but something which we gotta appellate. And see, there it is. There it is. You can see now how far we are and how far we are there. So sometimes the camera, we point towards the mountain here from there, but that's miles and kilometers away. And you see that's downtown, and you can see, of course, part of the bridges, part of the lakes. The lakes are further away, but this is the river, you know. That's the river, and you can see the flashes here, the arrows. So this points towards the Victoria Bridge, and you have arrows all the way, all around. See, another arrow there, Nuns Island. So you have several arrows there. See, that's what you have. several arrows all the way. So arrows from there to there. So the arrows start over there and they come here and they actually all over. So lots of arrows. You see the river? See the river? See the river? That's what we have. See, it says there, and that's of course the river, Montreal. That's what we got. That's what we got. A little bit of that city, Saint Lambert. I haven't left the island for years and years and years now. I guess I could start a little bit before September 11th. Maybe go. Supposedly I graduated high school. I lived supposedly on the South Shore, early 2000s, but I have no memory of. I don't have a birth certificate. I gotta. Maybe I'll find it in my places, in my place there, but maybe I don't know. But I have high school diploma and from elementary school, some records, and it's all the things that I have. So whatever the case may be, it's not important. The important is my rebirth here. This is really nice. See how they did it. So I gotta, of course, meditate and get the beauty. That's the beauty. That's why I don't pollute here. It is so nice like that. See how they are. Really nice. Allez-y, mon cher. Gotta let my fellow uncle there across because he's on the bike and he's gotta go with that. These are quite nice with that, and that's how I gotta get drilling on the left and on the right, and to get it for those, of course, to get all like that. See how they're aligned. Really nice. Good job. In other words, good job. But please don't leave trash there in the corner. Just put it in the garbage. I understand you want to drink, you want to have a soft drink, look at the city and whatever. Just don't leave it there, you know. We do have public works, yeah, public workers, sanitation workers. They're gonna pick it up and gonna clean, but still, you know, make an effort. So let's build the Imperial Republic's People's Coliseum to be the biggest ever sports arena facility coliseum ever built on the Canadian-US border. Public-private partnership, Canada-United States border to symbolize our coming unity and of course our common destiny, and of course to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community and fellow LGBTQ community, and of course the house, pyramid house, the scarlet and crimson, that's red, the house of the dragon, where of course I can have open house and open doors, and that is something of course which we always have to appellate, and of course I call all to support. Pledge your allegiance, friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance, thou art family. Quite beautiful, refreshing. They're kind of floral-like, a type of flowers, eh? But quite nice. I like it. Quite luscious too, and rich, I guess, in the diversity. But I'm gonna do a good gardens in the biggest sports arena ever, eh? We're gonna build it together, eh? Donald Trump and Canadians, brothers and sisters in the USA, eh? Gonna build it together. And we're also gonna build a Forgotten Goddess Temple, eh? And the House of the Dragon, pyramid, House of the Dragon, and that's how we're gonna get drilling with that, and that's what we're gonna appellate together in this conjugal part in this marriage which we're gonna have. So now I'm just gonna focus on geopolitics. Straight leave the baggage at the door. No more Asperger's, no more, except for beautiful gardens. This I gotta give a 9+ here. The colors are so nice. Beautiful colors, you know, so that is something which we have to do together, you know, that is something which we have to do, and we have to appellate together when we conjugate, of course. Oh, this is nice. I love it, especially with the lions there, and the red, and the red and the white. Actually, I would have to have that combination a lot in the People's Coliseum, the red and the white. It's a nice combination, I find, of flowers. They go well together, the color combo, red and white outlined, and they kind of look, you know, there's a symmetry, if you notice, symmetrical values, I guess. If you like gardens like that, that's my type of garden, like multicolor like that, or just the red and the white, and then with the rocks. I like the mixture of green, multicolor flowers, red and white, like that one, and the rocks, so that rugged and beautiful, Beauty and the Beast type of garden situation. Aesthetic. That's just a personal garden taste. So leave the baggage at the door. Geopolitics. I am an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist. I develop strategies for the mainly NATO complex, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO complex, and the North American civilization complex, which Canada, United States, and even of course Mexico is part of North America, even Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba is a part of the socialist communist under one-party state, but of course the islands as well, Bahamas, Jamaica is part of North America and other islands and other countries. The North American complex, we constitute a North American civilizational complex which is not only divorced but is distinct from Western civilization. Is not divorced but is distinct from Western civilization. So that is something which you have to fully understand. This is nice too. These double twins, I call them the twins here. And of course, again, I have proof for this following statement. So I have predicted what's happening now back in 2019. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. October, to be specific. October 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. There's going to be an international conflagration. So I predicted that there will be an international conflagration on the horizon coming. I have proof. I showed it on my small videos, which most people, I guess, watch more of those, especially my last week. There was the one that got the most views, was me enjoying a feast on a budget, $11 feast, Canadian feast, to eat three hamburgers. So that was a workout feast, I guess, on a budget. So basically what it is and where we're gonna go and where we drill it with that is something which we have to, of course, fully realize and fully implement together. My protocols, policies, programs, and initiatives and theories, the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Data Fusion Theory, the DFT, the Democratic Fusion Theory, via the fourth dimension, LOV. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. Not necessarily as a prophet, as a seer, but I am a mystic. I believe in reincarnation. Sometimes I was born a man, a woman, etc., etc., etc. But the point is that I have Asperger's, and due to Asperger's, my special interest is geopolitics, and it's a constant, right? It's been for years and years, even supposedly before. So I don't remember much of my life prior to 2014, but I have a document from my high school diploma whence I, of course, graduated high school 20 years ago, and supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College, and I have a good reference letter from a teacher from high school. So that means that geopolitics was always part of my psychic domain, as part of my special interest. Because you have special interest when you're an Aspie, but sometimes Aspies, it's see, the crow is crack, 4 times, say go, dragon. I believe my only fan. What type of OnlyFans would I have? I guess if somebody give me $1 million, I open no OnlyFans to eat black bananas, or something like that. The fruit, not the homosexual stuff. Although, I love homosexual activity, but I don't engage in it. But I'm not sexually frustrated or anything. I have a regular healthy masturbation, but I am pansexual. So if you're black, white, gotta be 18 plus. Black, white, rainbow. If you're a man, you're a woman, you wanna do some pansexual androgynous loving, we can do that. Rainbow Julius Caesar rock and roll, we can do that. Rainbow Julius Caesar rock and roll, we can do that. Rainbow Julius Caesar rock and roll, we can do that. Rainbow Julius Caesar rock and roll. And that's what it is, and that's how we got doing, we can do that. Rainbow Caesar rock and roll, that's what we got, and that's what we got, and that's what we gotta get doing on the go and doing on the left and doing on the right, side of things. So it's something which we have to totally fully integrate when we have our dimensions, and of course all the dimensions of our being fully expressed with secured freedom, secure liberty, which we're going to ensure, and secure liberty here for the North American collective, So that is just something which we have to appellate, and of course fully understanding the complexities of our North American dimensions, where we are now and where of course we are on the drill, and where we constitute us collective civilizational complex for the future. So I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. So made, created, and produced a workout training program system designed, made, and created to go hand in hand with such a scenario as the aforementioned. As I've said, aforesaid mentioned scenario was a World War III scenario. However, what I did not predict and what alarms me and pains me and makes me suffer most, I guess, and be more alarmed, and is I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. So the current trade war, and I did not predict that it's going to escalate and take a turn for the worse. Such as, to be honest, I did not really predict that Trump is going to be reelected, because Trump was still the president when I predicted that there's going to be a coming world war in the coming 7 years. So I did not really predict Trump's reelection, to be honest. I did not predict Trump's reelection. I did not predict that there's going to be an international conflagration. I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. In other words, a World War III, but I did not predict the current deterioration of relations with the United States. So I did not predict that our relations with the United States will hit rock bottom, will deteriorate to such a level as has not been seen. To be honest, not even in the 20th or in the 21st century, never. But of course, in the 20th century and 21st century together, as I salute the armed forces, flag spotted. You can see here, you can check a little bit of the information where you got there down. See, you can see a little bit of that good brothers and sisters in uniform. This is what you can do and what you can get, and that's what you have, of course, to appellate and of course to salute our brothers and sisters in uniforms across Canada, North America, and NATO, because my policies are North American centric, but of course NATO plexed. So I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. What I did predict was that there is going to be a deterioration of global geopolitical relations to the point of an international conflagration, also known as a world war. And in this situation, it's kind of a World War III. But since I didn't really call it World War III because I'm a geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, and in truth, in the 20th century, there was the First World War and the Second World War as we have them in the modern era. But there were, multi-nation organizations in the past. Even the Peloponnesian War would kind of be considered a bit by some of the other, whereas the different city-states is a type of war, type of war in a different ways, I guess, but still nonetheless a type of global war still existed before. But let's say World War III, international conflagration. So I predicted, I have proof. You can see it dates from 2019 October that I went and I even created a workout training program system to go with such a scenario as a World War III scenario, which of course I have myself predicted to be on the go and in the left and in the right, and in of course all the circumventional prepositions where we are of course now to the multi-dimensional beings of our life forces, of course to appellate and of course integrate all of our faculties in a direct manner for where we are today in a global conflagration, a state of course of a global conflagration where we are now, and where we appellate internally all our dynamics, where we are to be and we are to see, and we are of course to appellate, and we are of course to dictate over the domains of our knowledge internally and externally, and all of course the domains in the internal domestic affairs, and to exteriorize them with the externalities of the geopolitical realities of which we are now faced with, of course, which is of course the conflagration, of course, where we are today, the geopolitical conflagrations. And the geopolitical conflagration has been knocking at our doors. Now whether we were going to go nuclear or not, I predicted a plus 1% nuclear conflagration, plus 1% nuclear conflagration, but it was of course in the domain that it was more to be biological weaponry, to be a biological weaponry. So I'm just gonna HYDRATE before, as I will discuss of course the others, of course, The other confirmations. HYDRAT, 710 milliliters gotta be. Gonna drink all. Oh yeah, that is what it is. That is that rock and roll, you know. So I gotta get drilling, and I put it back and put it on the backpack. 710. I fully drank it, eh? Yeah, I am sweaty. These 3 days has been a sweaty road, and it's good, I guess. Sweating is good. I always love coming here, my second home, and we're gonna discuss, of course, my scenario. Make sure I got the backpack. In the back, I got those gloves, red gloves, and we're gonna go do 44 push-ups at the top, and we're gonna switch it again to that belle province French, because we're in la belle province. But first, of course, I want to finalize this domain here. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration. An international conflagration, and of course the international conflagration is happening now. Now we're all details, but it's happening as I predicted it. So my prediction, based on several layers of parameters, layers of intellectual, academic, scholarly, geopolitical analysis, just to summarize as I do, pretty much a sum and bonus summarization, or explain or present the main motives, the main reasons why I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration was, of course, mainly to the fact that many unresolved conflicts linger from the 20th century. From the 20th century. Specifically the Cold War area, which lasted between March 1947 and December 1991. Between March 1947 and December 1991. Between March 1947 and 1991. So some say even 1946 it started. Some say 45 years, 46 years even, but I go with 44 years and 9 months and some days, almost 45 years for me. I can go a little bit more, but you know, that's my take from March 1947 till December 1991. That there was an international conflagration. The international conflagration. There was the international conflagration. The international conflagration. The international conflagration. You know, so that is what has happened ever since in the 20th century. So I predicted that those conflicts, which are not fully resolved, are going to re-intensify, recommence, restart in the 21st century. If you look at Russia, Ukraine, it's an unresolved conflict exactly from the Cold War period. Israel, Hamas. Hamas was founded in the 80s, I believe 86, 87, or 88, before 1989, before the Berlin Wall fell by a few years. And it took them 20 years to get into power, right? Because they only took power circa June, July 2007, when there was a civil war type of situation in Gaza, right? This is an unresolved conflict, right? Of course, Pakistan and India, another Cold War unresolved conflict, and they both have nuclear arms. Another one from the 20th century, also during the Cold War, is the China-Taiwan. Taiwan is known as the ROC, Republic of China. And of course, China, The ROC, People's Republic of China, is of course known as the People's Republic of China. People's Republic of China is known, of course, as the People's Republic of China, and PRs is the mainland China, founded by Mao Zedong, October 1949, and Taiwan is officially known as the ROC, Republic of China. So they both have China in their official names, eh? Only one's the People's Republic of China, communist, socialist, and the other one's, of course, the Taiwan is, of course, the other one. Well, of course, this is the mountain, but we're going to enter by the side. So those conflicts, of course, were, of course, from the 21st. They came into the 21st century, but they have their origins in the 20th century. Just like I always say here, that we, of course, we made the great linguistic compromise of the French language to have continuity of peace, maintaining of peace in the North American collective for the most part in the 20th and 21st century. It has, of course, been valuable for us, and we've been able to maintain this peace together, to maintain this peace, in the circumstances of where we find ourselves now. But we continue to do the compromise of the French language together. We continue to do it together on the go, and we gotta get it on that now to get it on the drill always. So it's always a constant compromise which we have to get doing with that. That's something which I would will to paint all the benches here. There's so many benches I need to paint. Some of that yellow, blue, orange, or blue, orange, or yellow, or some of that other purple, or whatever it is. Of course, the rainbow colors is something which we have to do continuously, and something which we have to continuously do. Of course, the North American civilizational complex with that, and that's how we gotta get doing on that left side of things. And so that is the great linguistic compromise which we have done, and which still continue to do here in the now, so as you can see, of course, how many there are there. We are 44 million Canadians now, I guess, and 450 million, so 9 million of us here are French language in Quebec. But we have to do it, and I have to do it. If I don't do it, you don't do it, then we don't do it in community. So in other words, it's always a give and take. It's always myself, other, and to do it together, right? Because it's something which has to be done reciprocally and encouragement. And I will one day just bring me the bureaucratic tools, the paperwork, and the tools to paint these benches. There's so many tools here, of which, of course, so many benches to paint, and I would just love to just paint them. Some blue, some orange, some purple. I'd volunteer, actually, just to see these benches painted some color. I volunteer for free, because I come here often. It's my second home, I know paint costs, but all our North American collective civilizational complex has got to be embellished, and we got to do it for that, and we got to do it for the go, and that is just something which we have to do, and we have to appellate as a sovereign citizens, of course, as a sovereign citizens, of course, to be doing with that, and to be doing with the go, and to be doing with that, to get doing on the XYZ, and that's what it is, and that's what we gotta get doing, because the public sphere is also to be credited. That's why my dream is fundamentally a public-private partnership across the North American collective and the North American collective civilizational complex, which we are, of course, to do, which we are to appellate in the circumstances of the life forces which we are to attain and to do, and to, of course, see that all the things when we are, civilization is a privilege, and it's a privilege of civilization. It is a privilege of civilization, and civilization is a privilege, really. And that's the privilege of civilization which we all share. Certain, of course, privilege of civilization are not that obvious, or we're not totally fully aware of them on the constant intellectual academic basis. But of course, it's on the constant academic basis which we have, of course, to interact with the plurality of all our life forces where we manifest the individual and the collective. So I'm not going to go into the philosophical relations and of my thesis of 2023 that civilization is a privilege, but just take that instance. For example, that those telecommunication towers are along with the aqueducts to drink healthy water, to have electricity. Thank you, Hydro-Quebec, LOVE. Just that's probably radio antenna, television antennas, and of course 3G, 4G, 5Gs. And how many of us really know the inner workings? I know that it's radio waves. I'm going to stop there, and it's between certain gigahertz and hertz and the transmission of light energy and the radio telescopy and all that. But in a parallel life, I know, because I'm also an Aspi and I have Asperger's, and there all I know is science, technology, of course, science and technology and whatever we have, and science and technology and whatever else we have. So being that in a parallel life I know, in this life I know my geopolitics, but I know that all those towers are integral to the geopolitical sphere, and that's why I am not ambiguous or not totally sure to say that things such as stingrays, surveillance, have to be applied for the individual liberty, securing the individual freedom and liberty, and the collective. So there's always a balance and a compromise, because things such as tools, such as stingrays, could be applied for a greater good and for securing the individual imperial liberty sovereignty, which we will in our empire. That's why we have to have citizen integration theory, where our citizens are involved in public security, surveillance, and beautification and maintenance of the public health and order and wellness via my centrist public-private partnership mostly based philosophies. Nobody's perfect. I sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue. Police is in French and English, but they're not perfect. That's why we have to get established in the 21st century as a security and service total integrated force, the Imperial Republic's police force for the 63, as we're going to fuse Canada, United States, and fuse the RCMP and the FBI. And it worries me. The deterioration of Canadian relations with the US worries me. And I'm far from being a Trump supporter, but let's face it, although not that much fentanyl crossed, it was enough to potentially kill millions of Americans, It was enough to kill millions of Americans, although it was not that much. The potency of the drug, fentanyl, I don't know if you call it a drug or a bioweapon at this point. I don't know whether to call it a drug or a disguised biological weapon. Is it a disguised biological weapon? Used now more and more by transnational criminal organizations. What's going on? And we do know, because the RCMP, of course, stated it back in October 24. Watch across the street safely here. Watch, turn your heads. Sometimes they come too fast, and you gotta go slow here, but turn your heads left and right. So we have, of course, to get it on the go with that, and get it on the do, and that's something which we have, of course, to implement. So basically, what the meaning of the situation is, just to say that what alarms me is that we are now designated by the United States since August 1st as we're now designated Canada as a unusual and extraordinary threat since August 1st, due to our law enforcement agencies not cooperating properly with the United States law enforcement agencies. And we don't need the border, truth be told, the US, but we do need mass public healthcare and financing. Mass public healthcare and financing, that we do need. That we do need. Are they gonna go catch the bus? Maybe. Yeah. So that is just, they're gonna wait. That's nice. Or maybe not. Guess because the car got a pass, Anyways, so back to the point is, Gotta be careful here. So the point is that we're now designated as an extraordinary. I'm auctioning this glass as well for a minute. We're now designed as an extraordinary, and unusual threat, right, by the United States. And of course, supposedly the fentanyl which crossed this fiscal year, which was now a year over, compared to last year, supposedly tripled from Canada into the United States, according to U.S. law enforcement. It tripled, supposedly. And supposedly that fentanyl could have killed 16 million Americans, right? And we know, because the RCMP warned us still for years and years and years. If you look back, the RCMP kept sounding the alarm. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicates organizing, taking space, setting shop in Canada. There's a growing transnational criminal organized groups setting shop in Canada. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups setting shop in Canada. There's a growing transnational syndicate criminal organized groups setting shops in Canada. For years we've been warned. For years, For years we've been warned by the RCMP. And just last year, the 24th of October, 2024, last year, the biggest ever super lab was dismantled, seized by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is the equivalent of the FBI, in Canada. If you look on the RCMP's official website, it's related to the Surrey, BC super lab, and that's mentioned by the White House press release, that the growing domestic production via the establishment of super labs domestically in Canada constitutes a growing danger and threat. That's why most of the power were labeled as an unusual and extraordinary threat. It gives me shivers, look. Goosebumps. Goosebumps. Because if we're labeled an unusual and extraordinary threat, we don't want to be an extraordinary and unusual threat to my brothers and sisters in the United States. We gotta fuse, but bullying and is not the way to fuse. And we're not gonna fuse because of Donald Trump and because MAGA. We're gonna fuse because it's best for us to do so, for the medium and especially long term. But with the mass public-private partnership, mass financing of healthcare and fitness and general wellness, and we gotta give people second, third, even fourth chances. Even my brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, as I sing rock and roll for my brothers and sisters, boys and girls in blue, we're not perfect. I also gotta sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls who do their criminal rehabilitation. 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 Right? Our brothers and sisters who do their criminal rehabilitation as well. So the fact is that we have been labeled an unusual and extraordinary threat by the United States. And that's what it is, and that's what we gotta get doing with that. So that is just fundamentally the aspect where we have, of course, to appellate, of course, ourselves integrally. Here, God, to watch it because it's supposed storm and it's slippery. And also the branches, see branches like this? They fall, They fall, of course, on the go. So that is what we have to get doing on the life where we are now appellated, and where we are, of course, here to pass on the other side. Because see, it's muddy. So it's muddy, and you gotta be careful because there's falling branches and trees. That's why I always let people know that they have to be careful, of course, when they cross their street and when they do the appellation, of course, to get it going. Here, as you can see, the beauty of nature, my temple, my mistress, the forest on the mountain, the holy Imperial headquarters, Mount Royal, and the island itself of our coming empire. So we have to take it seriously, because what I'm going to say next, and once again to finalize, on the 24th of October last year, the RCMP, they declared, and they actually seized the biggest ever super lab, and they sealed 95 million fentanyl capsules, pills, capsules, whatever, how they're served, they're sold capsules of pills. 95 million, according to the RCMP, they could have killed the population of Canada twice over, just from this one super lab. which was part of a transnational organized criminal syndicate network. So think about that. So that the growing domestic production of fentanyl has increased, and we've been warned. So that is true. That cannot be negated, although there's not so much fentanyl crossing into the United States. But the point is it has increased because local production has increased. Although the majority of the market, I guess, is in the US because they have 9 times bigger the population as well, right? We're about 44 million because we were 40 million in 2020, right, when COVID started, and we had a mass immigration. Of course, Florida. Nothing wrong with immigration, but it seems that we have miscalculated by a few million, I guess, how much our system was able to absorb. You know, I guess we can absorb, and this absorption by each other, by fusing with each other, will strengthen each other. But we need to, Canada and United States will need to do this mass public-private partnership. So here as we are on the top of the mountain, Mount Royal, of course we got a appellate, and of course we got a sea, and of course we got a dew, of course all the way with the sun shining, and of course for all my brothers and sisters who are now across the North American Collective and getting a little bit of those rocks here. You can work out with the rocks. Let's take one to go. Oh, it's not that heavy, but maybe just do some push-ups later on, but nonetheless can work out. Maybe don't work out here because sometimes bikes come, but anyway, so I predicted what's happening now in a general manner, and now we're gonna focus on the DRT, basically the solution. Of course, the DRT is the solution to the current problems which are now facing us in the majority of the problems when we can fully comprehend the matters. But again, we're designated since August 1st, right? This Friday, we're Wednesday now, it's going to be 2 weeks since we're designated an unusual, an extraordinary threat to the United States. Now, to me, fentanyl, it sounds more like a effing biological weapon than a drug, right? A recreational drug, which the purpose is, you know, legal from 2019. Cannabis is legal coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and you know, I guess we got so much legal cannabis and some hashish that I guess that would give you to get high enough, I guess. But I guess this fentanyl, for me, it sounds it's to me it sounds more like it's a bioweapon, to be honest, than a drug, than a recreational drug, you know. I don't do drugs myself. I don't know if prior to spring 2014 I did. Maybe I was a junkie myself, you know. Maybe I was alcoholic and doing drugs for a few years, and that's why my memories black out. I don't do today. I even have legal cannabis for years and years and years. I think I had it now for 3.5 years, still the same, but I think it's still good. And you know, it's not something that I consume, you know, cannabis. But it's legal, Canada coast to coast, so it's legal. So I'm now going to discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory. Super important that you pay attention to the DRT, the debt refusion theory, fully. An explanation to what the DRT is. Now we focus on just the DRT, the debt refusion theory, and not everything else. Just going to formalize and finalize it. And of course, state that it alarms me that we are now deemed designated Canada for the first time. I never heard of this before. Not in the 21st century. And of course, although my personal memories black out prior to spring 2014, I do have, from readings I read, I guess if you check my records, I guess from 2015 to 2020 from the library, you're probably going to see that in the 5 years I just read hundreds of books, mostly 90% of them, 4 out of 5, 9 out of 10 would be related in a way, shape, or form to geopolitics, whether politics, history, economics, you know, things of that nature will probably revolve around geopolitics. Because geopolitics is universal, it incorporates religion, spirituality, geography, and other such things. So, that is just, I gotta be careful because sometimes branches fall, and we had a powerful storm earlier this morning and this afternoon, so it's still a bit wet, and you know, it could reverberate after the storm, you know, and the storm might begin any minute. See all the branches that fall there from the sky. Some of them we toss them from here. Even myself, I do a lot of tossing of branches, as you can see in past videos. such as this one. See, this one, it's right there from the, fell down. So regardless of the fentanyl not crossing so much, but it's still crossing enough yearly to kill potentially millions of Americans, right? Even if it's not a big percentage, the potency of it. So that's why they declared mostly public health emergency, you know, to with the response to fentanyl, the growing fentanyl use, and most of the overdoses now in the past 3.5 years, I guess, or this past during COVID and now today, and are due to fentanyl related. So that being stated, the proponency and the preponderation of this unusual and extraordinary threat, since we're designated in such a way, we have to take some action. It is required. Let's be honest, as much as I want to box Donald Trump in a boxing match, I will to state 100% that we're not enemies, right? We're not enemies. We got to find some solutions. We got to have some public-private partnership, and the rehabilitation also, my brothers and sisters who are homeless, who are, you know, incur. See that branch, how it fell down there? That's proof. That's why I let people know in my videos. You see that I want people. So we have to give people second, third, fourth chances, even via my North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act, in order to build the 44 mass tunnel city underground structures in case of a thermonuclear war, which I'm going to get in a bit. But nonetheless, we have to be accordant and attentive. Now, this following statement, which I'm about to make, one has to say yes. You have to accord it, have to say it in the positive, in the affirmative. You cannot negate, you cannot say no to it. You have to only say yes, 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 yes. You cannot say no, 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 no. You cannot say even maybe, not even maybe. You have to say yes. So our main interest, economic, social, financial, political, geopolitical interest, is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military defense relations with the United States. And the United States vis-a-vis us is the same. So once again, this is just like the pie. Not the pie, edible pie, but of course the pie symbol, which relates, of course, to the N, which is the two-headed, two-faced N. That's why our coming Republican Empire, the fusion of Canada and the United States into the perpetual Imperial Republics Union, Imperial Republic Union, the Imperial Republic Union, perpetual Imperial Republican Acts. We got to sign together. Let's do it September 11th. We need to, of course, concord these perpetual Imperial Republican Acts 24/7, and we need, of course, to republicate, of course, these perpetual Republican Imperial Acts 24/7, and that's how we have to do it together. So, of course, these matters, which you need to sign, the perpetual Imperial Republican Union, is, of course, the concordiate, and, of course, the appellation, and the knowledge, of course, that this is what it is. So we have to say, of course, state yes, 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 yes. You cannot say no to this. You cannot even say maybe. Our main interest, of course, when it comes to geopolitics, is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, diplomatic relations with the United States. You cannot say no to that. And that's reciprocity for the United States vis-a-vis us. So now I'm not discussing domestic affairs. I'm not discussing domestic affairs. I'm discussing, of course, external affairs. When it comes to our main external foreign policy objectives, as the primary, the most important aspect, the primary important aspect has to be, of course, for us to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. That is just how it is. You cannot negate, you cannot say no. You cannot say no to that. That is just how it is. So you cannot say no to that. You cannot say no, you cannot say maybe. That is just how it is. That is just how it is with that. See my black beautiful crows here, my legions. Hey, you know I love you. I love those crows. They're just so nice. And hawk number one for me, hawks. But of course, I also love the crows. So our main interest when it comes to foreign domestic affairs is to have the best, most cordial relations with each other. And that's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get doing on that go. So our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with the United States. You cannot say no. You cannot say yes. That is just, please don't leave trash here like this. I know you maybe storm and all that, or storms or whatever have you, but this has to be recycled, eh? 4 bags there. This has to be recycled. So I'm gonna go put it in the recycling myself. Although it's a bit wet though, eh? gonna just put a bit. So you have to, of course, concord. You have to concord it. You have to say. You have to say yes. Our main interest to have is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with each other, and that's what it is with that. And that's what we gotta get doing on that go side of things, and that's how we gotta get that drill. So that is just a constant, just by making the reference to the pi symbol, which is a two-headed, two-faced N, like the N, like the letter Norman, Normandy, normal, natural. So the N letter, which represents in the pi symbol, has like two heads, two faces. That's why coming empire will kind of have that. We'll have that two-faced, two-headed type of empire, type of our empire coming Republican empire. The 10, the 50, and the 3, the 63 will kind of have that. Two heads will kind of be like in the two-headed manner. So that's how we have to categorize, and we have to categorize in all our internal manners what we are appellated to be and to do. So that is just what it is. So please, these have to be recycled. Eh? All of these are a bit wet now, they have to be recycled with that. So of course, all the concordium in all, of course, the manners which we have is something which we have to understand fully. So our main interest, oh yeah, look at this beautiful garden. That's why I wanted to get on that beautiful garden here, and so we're gonna get doing here with the garden. Look at this. Isn't this just gorgeous? Wow. Phew. This is 10 out of 10, 9 out of 9. Look at that. That's just gorgeous here, see? Look at that. That is just so nice. One of the best. 10 on 10 garden for that. Wow. Just beautiful garden. Look at that. That is just on the go, see? Beautiful garden. Look at that. Phew. Beautiful garden, man. This is one of the best garden ever, which I have, you know. So we're gonna read, of course, all of the XYZ, and you know, we're gonna get. That's how we're gonna get drilling, you know, for the XYZ, and that's how we're gonna get. Let it over to the main now, man. Here we are to get it on the go and get it on the left, and doing a little bit of that exercise, and that's how we have to get doing on the go and on the left, you know. And that's how we gotta get. See, that's my favorite pyramid there. Look at that. That's the pyramid there, and my brothers and sisters in the United States there. We gotta get on the drill, you know, to get it on the drill, and that's what we got, you know. They gotta get it on the go with that, and we gotta get it on the drill, man, you know. We got a little bit of that drill, you know. That's what we got, and that's what we gotta get. You know, to get doing on the go, you know, so something which we have to get on the left with it, on the right, and all, of course, in all the manners where we have to get it here, and it's a little bit an in and out for them, a little bit and out for them, and yes, a beautiful garden. Look at that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is the beautification of the cities which I love. This is beautiful. Look at that. This is a 10 on 10. 10 on 10. 10 on 10. Wow. Wow. Now this is 10 on 10. Public gardens. Thank you, thank you. Public workers, you know. Gotta get it on the go, and public workers as we do, and that's how we gotta get drilling with that, and that's how we gotta get doing on that drill, on that rock and roll, and so we gotta get drilling, man, you know. So we gotta get it on the left and on the right and in the middle, you know. So something which we gotta get drilling, man. See, that's Montreal Hawk Island, and we're gonna get it by this side, and we're gonna descend down, and our descent is down. We're gonna get, just gonna stretch a little bit of my left and my right, and that's how we gotta get drilling, you know. Yeah, that's how we gotta get on that go, man, you know. Something which we gotta get it on the drill, you know. That's how we gotta get, you know, something which we gotta appellate with, and something which we have to get down that drill, man. Now we're going up and down, and you get it by the side, and you get sometimes, I wish I could paint this, just some blue, some red, orange, some yellow, some orange, some yellow, and some that, and that's how we got, you know. And yeah, these stairs, I really want to paint them. That would be so nice, just the colorfulness. Okay, so back to the DRT, and again back to that word label, an extraordinary and unusual thread. We have to take it seriously, and we have to record that just like that pi symbol For the pi represents a symbol, mathematical symbol. The relations, of course. The relation, of course, the relation, of course, which we have and which we have on the drill with that is, of course, something which we have to confluence. So the relation of the pi symbol, it's a pi number, it's an N, right? The N has two heads, for N for natural, Norman, neutral, or Normandy, of course. So that is something which we have to appellate in the constitutional manner, where, of course, we fully integrate our geopolitical complex together in a state, super state. So, of course, just like that pi symbol, which is a constant. A constant doesn't move. A constant is always the same. So that is, of course, the constants. The constant is a relation between the circle, the circumference, and the diameter of the circle. Right? So that is always the same. It does never change. So it never changes. It's always the dynamic. It's always the same. So this pi symbol representing 3.1416, it never changes. So just like that, the confluence is that this dynamic doesn't change. It's a constant. This constant always stays the same, 3.1416. So thus, in our geopolitics, the geopolitical relations which we have, is that our main interest is, of course, to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. With the United States, with the United States. That is a constant. That is not something which changes, That is not something which changes. That is a constant, So that is the constant, and that is, of course, what it is. And that constant is always the same. Always the same. Always the same. Right? That is always the same. That is always the same. It's always the same. It's never changing. Never changing. Right? Just like that pi symbol, for us, our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, defense relations with the United States. That is just what it is. It's just like that pi symbol, which represents the relation between the ratio of the circle and the circumference. Think of it. It's the ratio, the diameter and the ratio. It's a ratio related to the circumference of a circle. The circumference of a circle. The pi, it's a two-headed like N. So thus, our empire will have kind of like two heads, two faces, just like that. N, which stands for neutral, normal, natural, neurodivergent, or Normandy. So that is just, of course, the appellation which we have, of course, to get it on the go and to get it on the left and on the right and in the middle and in the set and all, of course, the appellational constituencies, of course, of which we have and which we are interdynamic of all our appellational studies and all that we might say in an intellectual academic manner. That is a constant. You cannot argue with that. That our main interest, and this is reciprocal, for the United States vis-a-vis Canada and the Canada vis-a-vis the United States, right? Look at that. And here we're gonna stretch a bit because it's gonna put my leg right here and it's gonna stretch for a minute. So our main interest, look at that pyramid. That's my favorite skyscraper, the pyramid. You can see the big river and the 50 states are not far. That way, that way, that way. We're gonna sing that cadence. We're just gonna stretch a bit and go in a minute. So our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with the United States. Due to our geographical position in the world, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we got the Atlantic and we got the Pacific. Because of our historical natural antecedents, our history, our common history and common destiny is something which, of course, we have to do and something which we have to appellate, and some things which we have, of course, to constitute in all the domains and the interrelations which we have, of course, here with each other. And we gotta set a new table right around Mount Royal, and all pledge your legions that are invited to this new table. I guess I'm starting to build a new table or are invited. So now time to discuss the DRT first and foremost for the North American Collective, the DRT Debt Refusion Theory. Let's build a new table together. So the DRT Debt Refusion Theory stands for D Debt R Refusion T Theory. It is my theory and it is only the solution which we have to implement. Kind of is the only solution if you think about it in the position where we are. It is the solution or something which resembles my DRT theory is the solution. There's no way, you cannot argue with it. It's not, you cannot argue, you cannot pinpoint a different position in regards to it. So I'm gonna now explain it. We're heading to the hydration, so it's best if I explain before we switch to French. So due to the four main problems, my DRT and the DRT, in my DRT debt refusion theory is integrated monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. The DRT which was implemented in the European Union. So of course the DRT, the debt refusion theory, was implemented in the European Union. The monetary integration theory, which is integrated in my DRT theory, was implemented in the European Union. Of course the Europeans, they created the common central bank, the ECB, and they issued, of course, a common currency, the euro. So, of course, that is monetary integration theory, which in Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, and other countries, by destroying their old national central banks and creating this new currency, common central bank and common currency, they no longer have national central banks, in many countries in Europe, just like we have here, in Canada, and of course, in Canada, of course, the common central bank as we have, and of course the situational relations where we are positioned, of course, for us to be in all the manners which we have, of course, on the spectrum of all the life where we exist today as human beings. So the DRT debt refusion theory, DRT debt refusion integrates monetary integration theory, and that is what we have to do in the implementation, in the integration, of course, of all the citizens' forces of which we are appellated integrally, of course, which we have to get it on the go and getting on the know now. So that's how we have to get the implementation of the DRT, the debt refusion theory. So we have no choice. Four main problems are pressing us now. One of the problems is the growing cost of rents. Even my rent, of course, augmented increase between $6 and $10. Growing cost of rents, growing cost of living, price of goods, even my wafers increased. Price of bacon, price of lettuce. The prices are increasing for everyday goods. The prices are increasing, right? Prices are increasing for everyday goods. Another is, of course, the growing indebtedness with the credit cards and stagnation of the salaries. So in whatever order, shape you put these four, these four are nonetheless the main problems pressing the vast majority of both Quebecers, Canadians, and brothers and sisters in the USA. So of course those are the four, and of course those are the incremental. So whatever order you place them, one, whether the growing cost of living, the growing cost of rents, the growing cost of the credit card debt, because we got both for Canada and the United States record credit card debts every month, every 2 weeks. There's a credit card debt ratio being broken, and of course another one is, of course, the growing indebtedness by credit cards. So these four: growing cost of living, growing cost of rent. Even my rent went up, but I'm not going to say by how much. I'm going to let you guess that it's between 6 and 10. Myself, personally, I cannot complain because I find it fair. But the growing credit card debt and the stagnation of the salary. So these four: growing cost of living, cost of rents, stagnation of the salaries, and the growing credit card debt. Even somebody's now utilizing their credit cards. So due to these, my DRT theory, debt refusion theory, is the solution, or the only solution. But as in relationship, there could be other solution, but which fundamentally have to resemble my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, of course, for the creation, of course, of the universal exchange unit, universal exchange unit. That's what we have to do, and that's how we have to get that drill, So that's what I'm gonna have to hydrate here, and gonna have to get on that hydration, HYDRATE, and that's how we got to get on that drill, to get it, of course, for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses. And I gotta salute as the DRT because, to have this water here is so cool, and so much brains and muscle to get it all the way atop. Engineering wise, you know, the North American Collective, this is the example, prime example of the privilege of civilization. This is a prime example of the privilege of civilization. This is a prime example of the privilege of civilization right here, you know. This is a prime example of the privilege of civilization. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The brain and muscle, you know, to have running water, of course, as we got that running water. So it's something which is a double plus good. Thank you, and LOV. And I think I'm going to also fill my bottle up here. And that's all we have to get doing, and I'm gonna get that mountain water. It's actually from the river, but I'm gonna fill it up, and gonna have for coffee, you know, as I get back. We're gonna have a little bit of coffee, gotta get doing, and that's why I'm gonna get that, look for a coffee here, you know, and fill it up. And so we're gonna get that drill for the go, get for that drill now, and we're gonna get some hydration via, of course, that LOVE to get it on the go. And so we gotta get it on that go, man. You know, it's super important to get, of course, a little bit of that hydration. We gotta get a little bit of that HYDRAT to get it on the go, and to get it for the left, the right, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, and the firefighters, and all those, of course, involved in the production, distribution of food. I'm gonna take a little bit more of that water. I'm gonna get a little bit of that hydration. Oh yeah, there we go. Filled up to go. Ready to get for that coffee. I'm gonna bring it home to have water good water here. This is good water here. Got all the brains and the muscle, because otherwise we'd be drinking from the river, you know. So we're gonna get that backpack. Gonna get a little bit of that workout, and we're gonna get going and hydrate some more for a go, and discuss the DRT fully, because it's super important to, it's an emergency actually, so we're really in an emergency situation with the economics. Myself financially stressed, paradoxically on the table, the DRT. That's all we got, you know. That's all we got to get on that drill, you know, for the XYZ, you know, and that's all we have to get on the perpetual, you know. So it's something which we got to get in perpetuity for the coming of the empires we got. Got to go at left, right, and gonna get for that DRT, debt refusion. Let's go, for me, for you, for us. The DRT, debt refusion theory, now explained as simply as I possibly can. As simply as I possibly can. So, we're going to take all the public and the private debt, right? Coast, ocean to ocean. My $10,000 debt, your $10,000 debt. Public and private debt. My $10,000, your $10,000. All the debt, public and private, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. My $10,000, your $10,000. We're going to add all the debt. So this is the DRT, debt refusion theory explained. So we're going to take all the public-private debt, convert it coast to coast, ocean to ocean into US dollars. We're going to add it with the US dollars. All that money is going to be the initial money supply for the establishment and the creation of a new central bank. It has to be implemented binationally. It has to be implemented binationally. So all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we're going to have to create it coast to coast, ocean to ocean. All the public and the private debt, we're going to integrate it, implement it coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to convert it into US dollars. Convert it into US dollars. Convert it into US dollars. Public and private debt. All that public and private debt, we're going to convert it into US dollars. And we're going to, of course, add it with the US public-private debt. All that money is going to be the initial money supply for this new central bank plus all the money that exists in circulation. Of course, we're going to create this new central bank, the Imperial Republic Central Bank, by whatever name we call it. By whatever name we call it, the Imperial Central Bank. We're going to establish it, or we're going to create the Imperial Republican Bank, the Imperial Central Bank. We're going to create the UE, U dot, a new currency based on the value of the US dollar, because that's what money is. Whether dollars, euros, shekels, yuans, etc., 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 etc. That's what the money fundamentally is, by whatever name the respective currency is called. Whether dollars or euros, or it was in the past no longer Deutschmarks, but shekels or yuans or yens, you know. So this new currency will have the value of the US dollar. We're going to be calling it UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. UE, UE, UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The UE, the UE, the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The universal exchange unit, the UE, the UE, the UE, is going to have the value of the US dollar. The UE, the UE, the UE, the value of the US dollars. The UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollars. The UE, the universal exchange unit. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. Of the US dollar. The value of the US dollar. UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. UE, UE, UE. With this money, we're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. We're not going to be able to have more than 10%. Maximum after that. We're going to build those 44 mass tunnel structure complex cities in case of a thermonuclear war. We're going to create this new central bank. We're going to do a great imperial census for the 10, the 50, and the 63. For the 63 of our new super state, Imperial Republic of United States, Imperial Republican, Imperial Republics of America. We're going to create this new central bank, issue the UE, fuse the FBI with the RCMP, create the Imperial Police Federal Service, create our Imperial Republican Guard, aka Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Republican Security and Service Force. And of course, we're going to mass establish a new security service and defense complex here in Montreal, Hawk Island, N.A.C.W.P for the 63. We're going to do a census, see where we can give some amnesty who hasn't been convicted of 44 criminal convictions in the past 7 years. If we got to discern and need to get the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act, we're going to mass finance citizens' fitness also. Because I've been on the fitness journey ever since I got out of depression, more than 7 years now. Celebrating 8 years soon. And of course, since I crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, in August went in BC, and September went, of course, in Halifax, Nova Scotia. You know, so that is something which we do, that is something which we have to do, and something which we have to appellate, you know. Which we have to, of course, get it on the go and getting on the left and on the right and in the sides where we are to do, you know. So that's what we have to do fundamentally. That's what we have to do fundamentally in equilibrium, you know, with all the appellations. We have to build the 44th mass tunnel system structure, city tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war as well. We're also going to finance mass intra-North American tourism, intra-imperial tourist, mass financing it via public-private partnership across the 63. See, of course, what's going on, and see, of course, the Grand Canyon, and hear the Banff. When I went to Banff, I had a revelation and awakening. I said, wow, what is this? This is heaven. Mountain of Seven, Banff, Alberta, the Rockies. And of course, mass finance tourism, mass finance fitness, build more hydroelectric dams, build more social housing, rehabilitate those willing. Is to be a citizen, individual, sovereign volition for rehabilitation, right? For rehabilitation. I would say take it. Gonna build some apartments, make sure that we got some webcams, citizen integrated where they can monitor, citizen integrated where they can monitor by not just the security apparatus, which we're going to build for total security, total service, total defense, but a credit system where we're going to credit some UEs, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.Unit, which we're going to create, and we're going to credit some UEs for those who work out, those who volunteer. We're going to create volunteering social credits, as well as, of course, we're going to create volunteering social credits, and we're going to create volunteering social credits, and we're going to create, of course, the universal exchange unit, and we're going to create, of course, the fabrication, of course, of the North American Collective Workers' Party, of course, to rehabilitate the criminal population and do, of course, the rebuilding of the public infrastructure, Canada, United States jointly. This is not a big branch, but it's sufficient, you know, to fall on somebody. That's why in my past videos you see that I give people warnings, and that's what it is with that, and that's how we got on the go, you know. Some things which we have to appellate, and some things which we have, of course, as the dictums, of course, for our social appellations and social well-beings, of course, to integrate fully, and the diaspora dicordium, of course, to do it in all the citizens apparatus, to, of course, finalize our creation of this UE and this new fusion. We're going to fuse Canada, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, rebuild our infrastructure, build more hydroelectric dams, and rehabilitate the North American population. Pledge your allegiance, our family. We really have to do it. It's something which we really have to work towards doing and implementing ASAP. My trinity of theories, especially the DRT, along with the CRT for total security, total service, total defense, created two complementary covenant cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army, aka the North American Integrated or the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion Security Service and Defense as a mass public-private partnership, and the Security Service and Defense Legion as a mass public-private partnership, and of course the SSD Security Service and Defense Legion as a mass public-private partnership, and of course the Dancing Goddess Army, the DGA, the International Integrated Dance League, Imperial Integrated Dance League for environmental education, purpose and action, environmental education and action, and mass finance, citizens fitness and tourism, general wellness proposition, and other such activities for the new empire, for our empire. We're going to fuse Canada and United States, create this new imperial constitution for perpetual imperial republic, our perpetual imperial republics union, imperial republics union of the 63. It's now 1, it's going to be 13. 10 plus 50 plus 3. Canada's 13 new states for this new reality. So we're going to strengthen each other, and also mass finance, healthcare, and rehabilitation, and we're going to focus a lot of internal domestic pacification and public health acts, and going to get back to health together in French because we're in la belle province. So bienvenue, hein? Je suis déjà sur le Mont-Royal. Oh, il y a des plantations qui viennent pousser. Je vous encourage aux Québécois et Québécoises à faire de l'entraînement physique. Aujourd'hui, on est le 13 août. Je viens encore un stress financier, du point de vue des finances. Chez nous, ça va pas si bien, mais quand même, je peux dire, commencer par la gratitude. Mon loyer est payé, ma facture d'électricité est payée. J'ai du café, j'ai du thé, bien sûr. Fait qu'en ayant du café, en ayant du thé, c'est des choses, bien sûr, que moi-même, je dois contribuer par la salutation puis la gratitude. C'est bon pour la santé mentale, puis c'est bon, j'adore venir ici. Après la tempête, j'ai entendu 44 tonnerres qui ont poussé bien fort, bien sûr, dans l'autre bord de chez nous, de la ville de Montréal, que la métropole, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce point d'envouement, bien sûr, pour le faire, que quelqu'un, une bébite noire me rentre dans les yeux, bien sûr, pour s'asseoir aujourd'hui, pour s'asseoir, bien sûr, pour être dans ce point de circonstance, pour le faire chez nous, de ce Nord-Amérique, l'Empire. Je vous souhaite une belle journée aujourd'hui. La canicule a diminué quand même un peu, mais il fait quand même encore chaud, fait que je transpire, puis je suis dans ma deuxième maison, ma maîtresse. La maîtresse, c'est la montagne que vous chantez du rock'n'roll. À la danse, les pieds, regardez, puis ça glisse. La terre, il y a de la boue, la pluie, regarde. Ouais, il a mouillé aujourd'hui, j'ai entendu comme 44 tonnerres, mais en tout cas, je vous encourager à faire l'entraînement physique, c'est bon pour moi, puis moi-même quand je vis ici, mais je me sens bien. Fait que maintenant, mon seul stress est vraiment du point de vue des finances. Le seul stress que j'ai moi-même, bien sûr, c'est un point de vue du stress financier dans ce bon point dans l'envoûtement de l'avoir, bien sûr, dans ce stress des finances pour les avoir, bien sûr, dans ce genre que quand même, je dois dire ma gratitude, j'ai payé mon loyer. Ayant payé mon loyer pour le mois d'août, on est le 13, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité à l'Hydro-Québec, fait que j'ai aussi payé mon cellulaire, fait que ça s'en vient que dès septembre, la même chose dès le 1er septembre, le loyer, je vais devoir payer encore une fois le loyer, l'électricité, puis bien sûr, ouais, mon téléphone, fait que là, il me reste comme 44$ et quelques cents pour le restant du mois, mais il reste. Ben, c'est sûr que c'est comme la moitié du mois, là. C'est sûr que c'est pas vraiment avancé dans le mois, mais quand même, c'est sûr que l'argent, ça se dépense. Fait que moi qui aime quelque chose de sucré, je fais toujours un budget pour en avoir pour mes gaufres, même si on a augmenté d'un petit prix. Oh, qu'est-ce que je viens de voir, un épervier. Hoc, 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 hoc. Ah, wow, comment il a volé, direct le même, là. Des fois, on les voit. Faut qu'il s'en pique les yeux, là. C'est mon oiseau préféré. Fait que, en vous encourageant à faire l'entraînement physique québécois, je vous encourage bien sûr à faire de l'entraînement physique. On est rendu sur la montagne. Puis bien sûr, en explore, ben, c'est sûr que moi je connais la montagne dans cette vie ou dans une autre. Vous savez qu'à part d'être neurodivergent, à part de la neurodivergence, bien sûr, je suis quelqu'un qui adore venir à la montagne. Puis j'adore venir ici. C'est ma deuxième maison. Fait que je connais pas mal la montagne. Même dans une autre vie, je venais quand même souvent à la montagne, puis je faisais beaucoup d'entraînement physique dans la vie antérieure, comme je le fais maintenant. Fait que, juste un petit mot, ne pas polluer, s'il vous plaît. Laissez pas des déchets, laissez pas des déchets, laissez pas des déchets, ne laissez pas des déchets, que ça soit dans la forêt, juste les ramasser, s'il vous plaît. Fait que, vous savez que je suis neurodivergent, j'ai une condition qui s'appelle l'Asperger's. J'ai été diagnostiqué par des citoyens, citoyennes de différentes, à travers les années, là, mais plus que 7, 8, 9 ans, là, déjà, qu'il y a plusieurs personnes qui ont l'expérience dans le domaine de la santé qui me l'avaient dit que j'ai l'Asperger, je suis autiste hautement fonctionnel, l'Asperger's. Et bien sûr, j'ai pas voulu l'accepter pendant ben des années, bien sûr, pour le faire. Bien sûr que j'ai dit non, je l'ai pas porté le stigme, mais bien sûr que c'est quelque chose, bien sûr que je l'ai moi-même dans ce point que je vis avec ça. Fait que je vais toujours vivre avec ça parce que il n'y a pas de médicaments, vous comprenez? On peut pas, c'est pas une maladie. Et encore une fois, je dois répéter, là, parce que la semaine passée, puis souvent, les gens, ils me disent, ah oui, je connais, c'est quoi? C'est la maladie. Puis je dis non. C'est pas une maladie, puis là, il doit se corriger. Puis là, je corrige, c'est une condition de neurodivergence. C'est un syndrome de neurodivergence, c'est pas une maladie. Hein. C'est juste que nous, on voit le monde différemment à cause de ces mutations au niveau du cerveau. Nous, on procède le processus d'information, puis le monde différemment. Puis certaines circonstances, certaines situations sociales ou les normes sociales, des fois, on a de la misère dans ces normes, de ces situations sociales. On a de la misère. On ne peut pas vraiment les comprendre de la manière que vous les comprenez, les neurotypiques, les 99,56%, hein, parce que nous, on constitue moins d'1%, mais la moitié d'un pourcentage, 0,44%. 0,44%, que ça soit bien sûr dans ce point de convergence pour que je sois bien sûr aujourd'hui, que moi, bien sûr, c'est sûr que ma neurodivergence fait que j'ai beaucoup souffert. Moi-même, la perte d'emploi, c'était quelque chose, la perte d'amis, hein, j'ai fait bien des amis, surtout à la parade gay, là, parce que je fais partie de la communauté LGBTQ, je suis androgyne pansexuel, c'est ça, mais j'ai perdu beaucoup d'amis durant les années qui se sont passées, puis ça, c'est à cause de ces caractéristiques, c'est pas des symptômes, parce que c'est pas une maladie, puis on a 3 problèmes majeurs, les Asperger, nous, c'est le manque d'amis, c'est pour ça que je veux pas d'avoir d'amis vraiment. Ben, si vous voulez être ami avec bénéfice, on peut s'arranger quelque chose, je veux pas perdre votre temps, perdez pas le mien, perdrez pas le mien, j'ai des amis avec bénéfice. Si vous voulez, on échange. Vous êtes adulte, je suis androgyne pansexuel, dû à mes réincarnations, des fois. Je suis monsieur, madame, 50-50. Fait que, à cause des bains des réincarnations que j'ai vécues, maintenant, ben, je suis androgyne, 50-50. Et donc, c'est pas mal, c'est comme ça que je vis mon quotidien avec ses intérêts spéciaux. Et bien sûr, cette neurodivergence que je dois toujours bâtir des ponts, des petits ponts. Pont moyen, pont large ou extra large. Fait en bâtissant, en construisant ces 4 ponts, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, ces 4 ponts, dans ce point de situation, bien sûr que je vis, bien sûr, dans ces 4 points, bien sûr, pour les avoir, bien sûr, dans ce point de contingence, bien sûr, c'est que, bien sûr, pour l'être, bien sûr, dans ce point de neurodivergence, des fois, de la misère dans la communication sociale qu'on communique, nous, on est quand même, nous aussi, direct, bien sûr, fait qu'on dit, bien sûr, directement, bien sûr, pour être, bien sûr, plus direct, des fois, on peut offenser les gens, mais des fois, on est direct aussi, tu sais, fait qu'on peut offenser quand même, tu sais, parce que notre cerveau est différent, c'est à cause de ces mutations. Et on n'est pas beaucoup dans le monde, on 0,44%, moins d'un pourcentage, fait qu'on doit toujours bâtir ces ponts. Je dis petit, large, gros, extra large, là, moyen, là, dans ces 4 catégories, c'est sûr qu'il y a des sous-catégories, là, mais je fais un peu une connexion avec, tu sais, quand vous commandez un café, des frites, ça soit un petit, moyen, large ou extra large, tu sais, c'est dans ces 4 catégories que ça rentre en dedans. Fait que des fois, on est trop intellectuel, sophistiqué, cosmopolite, de manière de forme, bien sûr, qu'on soit, bien sûr, de ce point de vue formel, s'arranger, bien sûr, pour l'être de leur point de vue d'avoir, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce point de situation, bien sûr, de convergence où qu'on doit bâtir. C'est bon parce que moi, j'ai pas vraiment d'antagonisme envers vous, les neurotypiques, tu sais. J'ai pas d'antagonisme, les relations sont négatives, rien que ça soit de même. C'est juste qu'on doit bâtir ces ponts, on doit les construire, puis des fois c'est plus difficile que d'autres. Bon, puis les 3 problèmes qu'on envisage, nous, les 3 problèmes majeurs qu'on envisage, là, c'est le manque d'amis. Pas besoin de gros amis, mais juste prêter allégeance légion, soutenir mon rêve qui est fondamentalement un appel à un partenariat public-privé, soit avoir des amis avec bénéfice, c'est vrai, je veux pas perdre le temps à personne, pas des palmiers, tu sais. Des amis avec bénéfice seulement. Ben, c'est ça, on n'a pas beaucoup d'amis, puis on n'a pas beaucoup... Tu sais, l'emploi, c'est quand même difficile. J'ai eu bien de l'emploi, j'ai bien aimé. C'est juste qu'à cause de cette différence, c'est quand même difficile. Puis le taux de chômage, là, sans emploi chez les Asperger, c'est trop élevé. Hein. Je peux pas accepter ça. Puis même vous ne devrez pas accepter que ça soit à 80% et plus. Plus que 85%, là, 80%, là, plus que 80, plus que 80. Si vous imaginez-vous, là, c'est 4 sur 5. C'est inacceptable. On peut pas accepter ça, là, 80%. Puis j'ai bien de l'emploi, puis je m'en souviens. Là, j'ai travaillé là 4 ans, puis dans la sellerie, puis dans d'autres places, puis là, j'ai entendu le monde chuchoter, puis dire « Ah, c'est une maladie, ça, c'est une maladie, ça, c'est une maladie, ça. » Non, je suis pas une maladie, c'est juste que moi, je vois le monde différemment. Fait que des fois, je vais dire les choses directes, ou je vais essayer d'être comme vous, les 99,56%, les neurotypiques, mais c'est difficile. Fait que on est différents. Fait que on peut être bizarre, étrange dans ces situations sociales, puis ça paraît, tu sais. Fait que c'est pour ça, tu sais, parler dans le dos, parler de choses qui n'est pas, c'est difficile pour nous. C'est difficile, c'est vraiment difficile à cause de ces mutations de cerveau. Fait qu'on est différents. Puis encore une fois, le 3e problème, on parle de manque d'amis, puis le taux élevé de chômage, c'est 11 fois plus que vous, là. 80%, là, c'est 11 fois plus que les neurotypiques. Pour chaque neurotypique, vous constituez la majorité de 99%. Pour chacun de vous sans emploi, il y a 11 Aspergers, comme moi, un Zaspi, là. C'est inacceptable. Puis le 3e, c'est le taux de suicide. J'ai été en dépression, j'ai été suicidaire. Fait qu'en étant en dépression puis en étant suicidaire, c'est 9 fois encore plus. Fait que j'ai vécu ça. J'ai sorti de ma dépression quand j'ai traversé le Canada de côte à côte. C'est pour ça le tourisme, ça fait du bien. Puis j'ai composé, bien sûr, blablabla, des pages, blablabla, des pages pour soutenir la population, bien sûr, pour le faire du tourisme, bien sûr que ça soit pour le faire du tourisme, mais c'est sûr que c'est quelque chose, bien sûr, qu'on doit le faire. Fait que le tourisme, moi, ça m'a fait du bien quand j'ai traversé le Canada en 2017. Là. En août, j'étais allé à Vancouver, Colombie-Britannique, puis en septembre, j'étais allé à Halifax, en Nouvelle-Écosse. Fait que ça m'a fait sortir de ma dépression. Là. Ça m'a fait établir un esprit de corps solide avec le Québec, le Canada, puis le collectif nord-américain, qu'est-ce que j'appelle en tant que philosophe, le grand collectif de l'Amérique du Nord. Donc, je vous considère comme une famille. Tu sais, des fois, c'est sûr qu'on a des dysfonctions, puis on n'est pas 100% sur la même longueur d'onde. Mais quand ça vient à la géopolitique, c'est là que je suis bon. Fait que c'est pour ça que je vais parler de la géopolitique maintenant. Fait que je vais rentrer dans qu'est-ce que je suis bon. Mes intérêts spéciaux, chez les Asperger, on a des intérêts spéciaux. Ma teinte, c'est le rock and roll, l'entraînement physique, la danse. C'est le sport que je préfère. Même maintenant, j'ai de la chorégraphie un peu. Avec la flore, la faune. Et le central de l'Hydro-Québec et les gratte-ciels. Puis les satellites dans les airs aussi sur les pieds à terre. Maintenant, en ce moment, fait que c'est avec ça et avec la géopolitique. Je suis un artiste, un athlète et penseur, analyste, théoricien, stratège de la géopolitique indépendant. Et vous devrez laisser le bagage de côté si vous en avez quand on parle de la géopolitique. Je commence par, on retourne en arrière, en 2019, j'ai prévu la situation actuelle qui se déroule maintenant. Je l'ai prévu, la situation actuelle qui se déroule maintenant. Je l'ai prévu en 2019, en octobre. J'ai prévu la situation qui se déroule en ce moment, en octobre 2019. Octobre 2019, j'ai prévu la situation qui se déroule en ce moment. J'ai la preuve, j'ai la vidéo, je la mets même en ligne là, sur des petites vidéos. Là. En 2019, j'ai prévu la situation actuelle. 2019, en octobre, j'ai prévu qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale qui viendra dans les prochaines années. C'est sûr que c'est un peu académique, sophistiqué, un peu cosmopolite, mais pour dire bien sûr qu'en grosse partie, j'avais prévu qu'à cause qu'il y a encore des conflits qui n'ont pas eu de résolution du 20e siècle et que ces conflits-là vont reprendre. C'était ça la conclusion un peu, en grosse partie, c'était vis-à-vis ce point de principal et important que ces conflits-là n'ont pas eu de résolution, qui datent du 20e siècle, qui datent de la guerre froide, qui a duré elle-même, la guerre froide, plus que 44 ans et 9 mois. Il y en a qui disent 45, même 46, entre 1946 et 1992. Bon, que ça soit ça ou autre, c'est sûr que moi je place la guerre froide entre mars 1947 et fin décembre 1991, donc pour un 44 ans et 9 mois. Fait que je vais dire proche de 45 ans. Fait que j'ai prévu la situation actuelle. Qu'est-ce que j'ai pas prévu, par exemple? Celle-là, ça m'inquiète, c'est qu'il y aura une détérioration des relations avec les États-Unis. Parce que là, on voit que nos relations avec les États-Unis ils ont chuté là, depuis 4 mois. Là, depuis 1er août, on est le 13 août. Ça va faire 2 semaines vendredi, on est mercredi le 13 août aujourd'hui. Depuis le 1er août 2025, là, le Canada, on est désigné officiellement par la Maison-Blanche. Puis le Trump, ça m'inquiète, j'ai des frissons quand j'en parle. Vous savez qu'on est désigné, là, puis les paroles comme un... Écoutez ça, c'est important, là. C'est sérieux. On est désigné comme une menace extraordinaire et hors commun. En anglais, c'est Canada constitutes an extraordinary and unusual threat to the American people. On est constitué maintenant une menace hors commun, unusual, hors commun et extraordinaire pour le peuple américain. Ça, c'est nouveau au 20e siècle. C'est nouveau pour moi-même. J'ai jamais prévu qu'on sera désigné de même. Puis c'est sûr que même, c'est sûr, la justification, c'est le fentanyl. Même s'il n'y a pas beaucoup de fentanyl qui passe, la GRC, là, notre police fédérale, ça fait des années qu'ils nous avertissent qu'il y a de plus en plus de crimes transnationaux qui rentrent. Des crimes transnationaux. Ils disent de plus en plus de crimes transnationaux, de syndicats de criminels, des syndicats criminels transnationaux qui rentrent, des criminels, des syndicats transnationaux et des criminels qui rentrent, des criminels transnationaux qui rentrent depuis comme 2017-2015, ils s'établissent, ils nous ont avertis. Puis l'année passée, là, le 24 octobre, la GRC, la gendarmerie, a démantelé le plus important laboratoire de drogue jamais éteint. Le laboratoire à Surrey en BC, un super laboratoire ils ont confisqué 95 millions de pilules ou de capsules de fentanyl. Puis là, aujourd'hui, je me demande, là, le fentanyl, c'est-tu vraiment une drogue ou c'est-tu une estidame biologique? Parce que si c'est mortel de même, là, que ça aurait pu tuer 2 fois la population canadienne juste dans ce laboratoire. Il faut se poser des questions, tu sais. On a légalisé le cannabis, on a légalisé la chiche. Je suis ni de la droite ni de la gauche, je suis centriste, républicain, démocrate, mais c'est sûr que quand ça vient de... Je m'inquiète pour votre sécurité, là, le Québec, le Canada. Là, on est désigné une menace là, extraordinaire pour le peuple américain. C'est décrit que les capsules qui ont passé là, cette année, ça a constitué 3 fois plus de capsules de fentanyl. C'est écrit en noir et blanc qu'il aurait pu tuer 16 millions d'Américains, là, du Canada. Fait que vous comprenez où je m'en vais avec ça? C'est sérieux, là. Il faut prendre ça au sérieux. Puis nous, bien sûr, l'importance, là, c'est le plus important là, qu'on a, là, nous, là. En tant que Québécois, Canadiens, Québécois, puis c'est réciproque pour les États-Unis, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis, nous. On a de côte à côte de science. Ça, c'est comme le symbole pi. Quand ça vient en principe pour la politique externe, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis, là. Il faut qu'on vise en tant que politique externe, je ne parle pas de domestique, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis avant tout. comme première importance pour nous, là, le Canada, je parle. Puis les États-Unis, vis-à-vis de nous, c'est la même chose. Même s'il y a une frontière avec le Mexique, ça s'applique à nous, vis-à-vis du Canada. C'est comme le symbole pi. Tu sais, le pi qui représente le ratio, la proportion, bien sûr, du cercle avec la circonférence du cercle, bien sûr, puis du cercle qui se rend, bien sûr, dans un point de convergence à voir dans le cercle aujourd'hui, puis ça soit, bien sûr, dans le cercle, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, dans ce cercle, que ça soit le cercle de la conférence et de la circonférence pour que ça rentre bien sûr, dans ce cercle et de la conférence, bien sûr, qu'on vit aujourd'hui. C'est la relation, ça ne change jamais, c'est constamment la même chose, c'est une constance mathématique. C'est le symbole pi. Tu sais, c'est comme le N de Normand, la lettre N pour Normand, neutre, naturel ou neurodivergent. Pour neurodivergent ou Normand ou Normandie, là, le N. Ça a deux têtes, ça a deux faces. C'est pour ça que notre fusion avec le Canada et les États-Unis, notre empire républicain-démocrate aura comme deux visages, deux faces. Exactement, par le fusionnement des 10 et 3 territoires. On va constituer 13 nouveaux États avec les 50, mais on va faire une nouvelle entité totalement nouvelle, en absorbant et en créant une nouvelle entité pour le 21e siècle, cette nouvelle réalité de fusionnement impérial républicain, par ma TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. Puis là, je vais en parler de la TRD parce que c'est super important que je la parle, parce que bien sûr, c'est la solution, bien sûr, qu'il faut qu'on l'implémente, qu'il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation de cette solution. La TRD, fait que la TRD, je vous la discute maintenant. TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. La théorie R, refusion de la dette, c'est la théorie, bien sûr, qui va nous sauver, bien sûr, du point de vue où qu'on est rendu aujourd'hui à faire, bien sûr, à faire. Puis on a 4 problèmes qui nous touchent, les États-Unis, puis les États-Unis, puis le Canada ensemble. Les États-Unis, puis le Canada ensemble. Les États-Unis, puis le Canada ensemble. C'est 4 problèmes majeurs qui touchent la majorité de la population, incluant moi-même, en vivant un stress financier. Ces 4 problèmes sont: le coût de la vie augmente à tous les jours, à toutes les semaines. Le beurre, le fromage, le pain, ça augmente. Les coûts de la vie augmentent. La vie qui augmente, c'est un problème. Les loyers qui augmentent, même mon loyer a augmenté. Je dirais que c'est entre 6 $ et 10 $, fait que je ne pourrais pas dire plus. L'augmentation du loyer, encore une fois, l'augmentation du loyer, proportionnellement, bien sûr, à ces augmentations, bien sûr, du loyer, bien sûr, c'est la stagnation des salaires. Et le 4e, mais dans quel ordre qu'on met ces 4 problèmes économiques, financiers, commerciaux, économiques pour la majorité des citoyens du Canada et des États-Unis aussi. C'est pour ça que la TRD, il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation du point de vue binational. Fait que ces 4 problèmes-là, bien sûr, ces 4 problèmes-là, ça nous touche, bien sûr, pour qu'on fasse, bien sûr, de la circonférence. Fait que la TRD, il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation, ça fait partie de la stratégie bipolaire. Ne pas confondre ma stratégie bipolaire géopolitique pour la domination bénévole totale du monde par le complexe ou le syndrome de bipolarité en psychiatrie puis en psychologie. Ça n'a rien à voir avec la psychologie et la psychiatrie, par exemple. Ça a à faire avec la géopolitique. Et ces 4 problèmes, encore une fois, les loyers qui augmentent, le coût de la vie, ça augmente, la stagnation des salaires et les cartes de crédit. Il y a un record de cartes de crédit, maintenant les citoyens sont en dette, surendettement. Il y a un record depuis la COVID, on voit pour les Canadiens, les Québécois, les Canadiens aussi, mes frères et sœurs des États-Unis aussi, il y a un record de cartes de crédit. Fait que c'est 4 problèmes. Fait que c'est pour ça que la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, c'est la solution. C'est un paradoxe que je vous mets ça sur la table avec toutes les souffrances que j'ai vécues, mes cicatrices, la perte de mémoire. C'est que j'ai de la misère à me souvenir de ma vie avant printemps 2014. C'est sûr que ça fait longtemps, là, 11 ans et 4 mois, mais ma vie avant ça reste un mystère. J'habitais dans une petite, c'était comme une prison, là, c'était comme une petite cellule de prison. C'est sûr que c'était pas une cellule de prison accidentelle, là, mais c'était comme une petite cellule de prison en Côte-des-Neiges. Il y avait beaucoup de moisissures, puis je sais pas si avant printemps 2014, peut-être une couple d'années, moi, je faisais de la drogue, je buvais beaucoup d'alcool, puis des fois, c'est ça, le trompe, j'ai été attaqué vicieusement, j'ai survécu une attaque vicieuse par surprise, je suis tombé, je connais ma tête, puis j'avais le bras droit disloqué. J'étais tout ensanglé, j'étais pas mal ensanglé, j'étais allé à l'hôpital général Juif, ils m'ont mis sur des médicaments, puis je dois aller voir ces archives, là, c'est ça, quelle année que c'était, là, parce que, en tout cas, j'ai déménagé, puis j'ai changé ma vie, c'est sûr que je change, mais avec l'Asperger, l'autisme, je dois toujours constamment être conscient que je dois travailler sur des caractéristiques quand j'en discute avec les autres. Mais c'est plus le travail que ça compte pour moi, ce travail de la géopolitique artistique, puis pour la construction de cette nouvelle entité politique de partenariat public-privé qu'on n'a pas le choix pour les 63. Donc la TRD, je vous l'explique. TRD, théorie à refusion de la dette. La théorie de la refusion de la dette, c'est la théorie, bien sûr, qu'il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation ensemble. On n'a pas le choix à cause de ces 4 problèmes. Donc on va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, mon 10 000, ton 10 000, ton 10 000 de côte à côte de Civilisation du Canada. On va convertir toute la dette publique-privée canadienne, incluant mon 10 000 en tant que citoyen souverain indépendant. On va faire l'addition avec la dette publique privée des États-Unis, parce qu'il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation Canada et États-Unis ensemble. Puis dans ma TRD, ça contient la théorie d'intégration monétaire, qui est la théorie, bien sûr, que les Européens ont fait l'implémentation dans les années 90 en Europe. Fait que toute cette dette-là, bien sûr, on va mettre ensemble. On va faire un gros partenariat public-privé, puis on va créer la création d'une nouvelle banque centrale, Imperial, pour le Canada et les États-Unis. Puis on va mettre en marché, en circulation, une nouvelle monnaie, quand ça va s'appeler Louis. Oui, on ne s'obstinera pas, en anglais c'est pareil. Oui, on ne s'obstinera pas, en anglais c'est pareil. Oui, en anglais c'est pareil. Oui, en anglais c'est pareil. L'unité d'échange universelle. U point unité, E point échange, point universel. Oui, U point unité, E point échange, point universel. Oui, U point unité, E point échange, point universel. U point unité, E point échange, point universel. L'unité d'échange universel, U point unité, E point échange, point universel. Oui. U point unité, E point échange universel. Oui. L'unité d'échange universel aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. Oui. L'unité d'échange universel. En anglais, c'est pareil. Oui, aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. U point unité, E point échange, point universel. L'unité d'échange universel aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. Et bien sûr, on va faire la création de cette nouvelle monnaie. On va mettre un taux d'intérêt de 10%. Et on ne pourra plus avoir plus que 10%. Avec cet argent-là, on va rebâtir l'infrastructure du Québec. On va faire un grand recensement des 63 du Canada des États-Unis, voir qui vont pouvoir être éligibles pour construire les 44 tunnels. Dans le cas d'une guerre thermonucléaire, on va bâtir 44 villages, terrain souterrain, bien sûr, 44 villages souterrains, bien sûr. On va bien sûr bâtir plus de centrales d'Hydro-Québec. On va financer la reconstruction de l'infrastructure. On va financer les gens en entraînement physique, financer les gens au tourisme. On va faire beaucoup de biens communs. On va faire un passeport commun, un grand recensement. On va financer les 2 institutions de partenariat public-privé, soit l'armée du Dragon, l'armée impériale, la République, soit la garde républicaine pour la sécurité, service, défense seulement, l'Empire, bien sûr, la danse, la Ligue impériale de la danse, on danse. Pour, bien sûr, l'environnement, l'éducation environnementale, puis l'action, bien sûr, c'est 2 institutions de partenariat public pour la sécurité, service et défense totale des 63 des côte à côte. On va construire les 44 tunnels dans le cas qu'il y aura une guerre nucléaire à travers à travers le monde. Et bien sûr, on va bâtir plus de centrales d'Hydro-Québec. On va aussi financer le tourisme. C'est le tourisme ensemble, prêter allégeance Légion. Vous êtes famille, hein? Et ici, on veut bâtir le temple de N.A.C.W.P, la pyramide Maison de Dragon. Et bien sûr, ici, on va faire ensemble des pompes. We're gonna do some push-ups, finalize cadence and some push-ups atop the mountain here, where I will be buried with Papa Crowley. Third of me here at the Belvedere, we're gonna do some push-ups, cadence, special 3 minutes cadence. We're gonna rock and roll. For the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, all those involved in the production, distribution of food. Let's get ready. Give me some push-ups, drop it like you're rock and rolling. For the butchers, for the bakers, for the nurses, for the doctors, firefighters, for the plumbers, for those left and right you see, and you know we gotta be left and right in harmony, that you know we gotta see. Gotta go for some squats. Gotta go for what you got. Hey, for the train conductors, electricians, and the nurses and the plumbers. Gotta rock and roll with thunder for the workers for the empire. Gotta sing and that you be. Gotta swing it that you see. For the left and right in harmony. Gotta go so that you see. And you know we got a left, and you know we got a scepter. Set up in the bay. Gotta do some more push-ups so that you see how much we do. We're doing some, we're gonna do some more. Let's go. Push-ups. Cadence. Gotta sing it left and right. Yeah, feels good. Doing some push-ups here and doing some push-ups there. It's always good for you. Gotta go, and that is something what you gotta do for the left and for the right, for the set and for the sides. You know that we gotta see. That's the spider, spider bee. Spider, look at the spider. That's the goddess blessed. That's a good omen. The golden spiders. Look at that. I'm not lying. Look at the golden spider. Golden spider. It's got some gold. Golden spider. It's got some gold. Bringing our little efforts for me and my honest friends some of that good gold. Let's go. Do some more push-ups. Do some more rock and roll. Do some more push-ups. Do some more rock and roll. Let's go. We're missing 11, right? Rock and roll cadence for the butchers, for the bakers, for the nurses, for the doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, and the welders. Gotta get some rock and roll. Gotta get some sentence go. You know just who we be. Dragonomy harmony. Play some push-ups, play some cadence. Gotta get the rock and roll the sentence. That is me and that is you. For the left and for the right. For the German out of sight. That's the left or right. So you bite and so you see. Satellites and so you be. Satellites that rock and roll. Atop the mountain, here we go. So you know we gotta be. On that left or right you see. For the firefighters, plumbers, electricians, nurses, daycare workers changing diapers. Hey, gotta get construction workers on the cranes for the workers, steel toes, you know we got it. Plumbers, electricians, train conductors, choo-choo up that train you go. 11 more push-ups to get to 44. Let's go. Yeah. Let's get ready. That's what I gotta do, and so I gotta see. That's how I gotta get it on the go and get it on the know, and that's how I gotta get it on that and on the left and in the side and in the yeah. Pledge your allegiance to our family. Bury a third of me here. Third of me right here. Let's build a forgotten goddess temple. Gotta come work out with some rocks. The house of the dragon. Here, pyramid. Bury me, third of me here. Third of me at the back of the Belvedere. Right here, Montreal. Back of the Belvedere, Conjure Knock atop Mount Royal where we are now. And Third of me with Papa Crowley up in Hampton, New Jersey, and a third of me over the city of the pyramids. Somebody built some of that good structures here. Somebody brought some of that good rock. That rock looks chiseled up, and we got a little bit of that rock and roll. So we gotta do, and gotta get it on that, and yep, rock and roll.